I'd like to call the March 21st, 2017 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Coombs.
Here.
Council members Bagley.
Present.
Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Moore. Here. Peck. Santos. Here. Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at first call, public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their name on the list will have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing item or at final call, public invited to be heard. So now we have the February 21st minutes to approve. Councilmember Finley.
Mayor, on my agenda it says February 28th.
Excuse me, you're right.
I move that we approve the minutes of February 28th.
All right. All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of February 28th. Councilmember Christensen.
I forgot to point out that in the the discussion of marijuana, it says medical marijuana, and that's actually not what we were talking about. We were talking about medical and recreational marijuana, and that should be fixed.
What page?
What page was I left this? I don't know. I don't see it now.
It's March 7th?
Yeah, it has to be March 7th. It's the top of the page. I don't know. Well, I don't see it now.
28th, there's another 7.
Oh, okay, that was it then. It's the 28th. And, okay, it was on page 6 of the 28th, I'm sorry. And, yeah, the discussion was on medical and recreational marijuana, and oh, no, I'm sorry. It's on page 2 when it talks about, at the top of the page, where it talks about Mayor Coombs moved, seconded by Peck, to direct staff to draft an ordinance for allowing no more than 6 medical marijuana retail shops in Longmont. And that was actually for recreational and medical. And it was actually supposed to be 4 stores, but.
Do you want to then amend the? Oh. Okay, we're fine with the amended. All right, let's vote. Paulie, you need to vote? Thank you. 7-0.
Good job, Paul.
That was a good catch.
Okay, now we have the March 7th regular session minutes approved. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move we approve March 7th minutes.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions or additions?
Mayor Coombs' staff doesn't have any revisions.
Okay. City manager, is there a report?
No report, Mayor, Council.
All right. Now we're off to the special reports and presentations, MetroVision. I think Aaron Fosdick will start this presentation. Yes. Just a minute before you get started, we have the, I guess, Councilmember Peck would like to chime in here on the agenda revisions and submissions.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I missed that until just now. Actually, I would like you, Mayor Coombs, to give direction to staff to bring back an update on the jump fees for Vance Brand Airport.
All right.
Are you interested in doing that? To give direction to staff to bring that back. I would like a report on where we are on the jump fees on the airport.
That seems reasonable. Is everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And I do have one other thing. Do we have a date for the marijuana forum yet?
Pretty sure
We don't. And why is that?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Peck, we would prefer to bring that item to you the last meeting in April, and then set the date after we have a little bit more direction from council, if that's okay. But we could go ahead and schedule that as well.
No, I just wasn't sure of the plan, of where we were with the plan. That's fine with me. Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, you're up. Sorry about that.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Aaron Fosdick with Planning and Development Services Department. It's my pleasure to introduce Brad Calvert from Dr. Cog, who's going to give a brief presentation on MetroVision 2040. Dr. Cog, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, is the regional planning agency. The City of Longmont planning staff and others work closely with Dr. Cog, and we've participated over the past several years in this very important planning effort. I would say MetroVision's akin to a comprehensive plan for a city, so you can imagine that it's a very important plan for the region and the culmination of a lot of, I guess, years of work. And Brad will talk a little bit about that. Councilmember Peck, you'll recall, is our current Dr. Cog representative, and so she may have some additional items to add from a board perspective. But we'd like to congratulate Dr. Cog and the board on unanimously adopting this plan earlier this year. And Brad will provide an overview, and then we'll take any questions. If you're interested in having a copy of Brad's presentation, I'd be happy to email that to you after the meeting. Just let me know. With that, I'll introduce Brad Calvert with Denver Regional Council of Governments.
Clicker.
Just use the mouse. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Aaron, for that introduction. Mayor, Council, thank you very much for having me this evening. As Aaron mentioned, my name is Brad Calvert. I'm with the Denver Regional Council of Governments. To give you kind of an idea of what I do at Dr. Cog, I'm the director of the Regional Planning and Development Division, which includes sort of your long-range planner types, economists, our GIS professionals, software development group, that sort of thing. And tonight I'm just really going to share with you briefly, because I know you have a very packed agenda, a little bit about the process to come up with ultimately a revision to the region's long-range plan for growth and development, also known as MetroVision. But rather than sort of diving in into the specifics of the plan, I really want to talk about some initiatives that are coming up this year that really might be of interest to council. So I assume most of you know what Dr. Cog is and what we do, but ultimately we're a regional planning organization that includes all 56 local governments in the Denver region. We work on any number of issues. Our primary areas of focus are on growth and development issues, transportation, and the needs of older adults and caregivers. But we're active at the state capitol. We're active in Washington, D.C. on issues related to needs and challenges that maybe the metro area is facing. So we obviously work on a lot of different types of issues. And as Aaron mentioned, Councilmember Peck is the current member on our board of directors. Dr. Cog exists to do planning. We were formed in the late 50s, early 60s to focus on this region and to understand our shared needs and how we might work together as a region to create plans to move us forward towards that shared collective future that the region sees. So this is the very reason why we exist as an organization. Central to that is this idea of the MetroVision plan. It is, in many ways, the big picture aspirational vision of what the Denver region wants and anticipates being over the next 25 or 30 years. In this case, as Aaron mentioned, it was 5 years of conversation with stakeholders, elected officials, the public to understand, as a region, where do we want to be, in this case, in the year 2040. And we think of that regional plan as something that shapes everything else that we do as an organization. One of the things that we're really known for is the allocation of federal transportation dollars in the region, and oftentimes MetroVision is one of the things that's considered by the board as they're evaluating how to ultimately allocate those scarce resources. As I mentioned earlier, this was a very long process, probably 3.5 years of really pretty intensive stakeholder engagement, and another 1.5 years with the board, spending very, again, 1.5 years or so with the board actually coming up with really this aspirational document, whether it was citizen committees, technical committees, any number of opportunities. I'm not sure if Aaron is in that picture, but Aaron was a member of a technical group that met for about 2 years early in the process to ultimately shape what became the final plan, and she was a very valued contributor to that process and really kind of brought a lot of energy and focus to what ultimately became the plan that the board adopted. So 5 years in the making, ultimately boiling down to a series of public hearings and adoptions by the board of directors. And as was mentioned, it was unanimously adopted by the board back in January. Just a few things to keep in mind about MetroVision. Think of it as a shared guiding vision of the board of directors, as well as an idea or sets of ideas that really the region can collectively work towards to achieve those aspirations going forward. It is long range and regional in focus. To think of it as a policy document probably isn't quite right. It maybe sets the stage for a policy conversation, and really it takes actors from around the region to ultimately result in the vision that's laid out in the plan. But we also recognize that not every single one of those 56 communities is the same, has the same sets of priorities and values, so the expectation is that our member governments in particular contribute at different pathways and at different speeds. One thing that was very interesting in this planning process, that as someone who's been through various regional plans over my career, we made a very real attempt to tie this and integrate it with a larger strategic planning effort that was happening at DRCOG, connecting this to sort of conversations about governance and how ultimately our board operates, how as an organization we work to achieve the vision that's laid out in MetroVision. So starting all the way at the very top, our board adopted a new mission and vision statement for the organization about 3 years ago, and that worked its way all the way through our overall strategic planning approach, all the way down to very specific strategic initiatives that we will pursue as an organization and or lay out there for others to pick up and maybe work on their own or in collaboration with DRCOG. Again, I won't belabor or spend a lot of time talking about every single aspect of the plan, but if you want to see sort of just the absolute highest level, the plan is organized around 5 overarching themes that, again, lay out really what this region aspires to be in the 25 years into the future. And these are those 5 overarching themes. You know, we anticipate continuing to be a model around the country when it comes to growth and development. Obviously focusing on our role in thinking about transportation issues, recognizing the world-class natural and built environment we have in our region and making sure we pay attention to that, maintain it, and improve it over time, recognizing the value of creating healthy and inclusive communities, and then focusing on and recognizing the reality that a vibrant regional economy is important to this region for any number of reasons, including the individuals and families that live and work in the region. So as I mentioned, I really kind of I thought you might be most interested in sort of next steps, given that we hit this big milestone of adoption. We are feverishly working to create a more robust web presence for the plan, because that in many ways is how people will tie in to the conversation. As I mentioned previously, MetroVision oftentimes does inform other planning efforts at DRCOG and around the region, so our board ultimately is the arbiter of how that happens. We will be focusing on performance monitoring and reporting. The plan establishes 13 overall performance measures for the region, so a big part of our job is to understand how we're doing on those measures that the board has tasked us with, and then also obviously evaluate how we might do better over time, and then obviously moving forward with both existing and new regional initiatives, and I'll hit a few of those highlights here pretty quickly. One thing that we are working on right now, which is a pretty neat endeavor, one of the things that DRCOG is known for is data and our sort of technical capacity, but oftentimes those tools are oriented towards the region to understand how the region's going to change over time. I mean, we have a regional travel model that focuses on how transportation and travel patterns change. We have another model on the land use side of things to understand how the region might grow going forward. We are currently working through a process to understand how those tools could be applied more at the local level, to give our local communities and our member governments those same tools to help them go through a similar exercise to understand how changes in land use or transportation patterns might impact their communities. And so we are currently working in 5 pilot communities around the region, focusing around what are called urban centers, but also transit station areas. And one of the reasons we're doing that is to ultimately think about places like Longmont in the future that are thinking through, in this case, you have 5 urban centers designated in the plan, helping you understand really what those what-if scenarios, how they might impact things that are important in the community, whether that's how people travel, sales tax, impact on local revenue, those sorts of things. So we're working through to make sure we can provide those tools and services to you should you choose to avail yourself of them. One other thing that we continue to work on, and I mostly mention it as a sort of kudos to Longmont, this is something that you all worked on a few years back called the Boomer Bond. You used it as part of an assessment of understanding how Longmont can be more age-friendly and integrate aging into many of the things that you work on. And I wanted to mention it to you, even though you've already done this, that we actually use Longmont's process as a model. We're currently working in 6 communities, and really the way that you guys handled the process from how you organized your stakeholder engagement to really kind of the deliverables associated with it, we now are using that as sort of the way that we actually recommend that communities go through this process. I was actually just in a meeting today working on the final recommendations for the City of Sheridan's assessment, and if you held it up right next to what Longmont did, it would look the exact same in terms of content and style, because you guys just did such an A-plus job on that. Another opportunity that's coming up that I thought you'd make you aware of, kind of related to that same urban centers conversation, one of the things that DRCOG does is we provide funding for our members to support local planning, particularly in areas that are designated as urban centers. And so you saw that map earlier with 5 areas in Longmont that are currently designated. We will have another round of funding available to support local planning along those lines, probably in sort of the May to June timeframe is about when the announcement will be made. And then another thing that we're doing at the regional level is focusing on active transportation, so people-powered transportation, biking, and walking. And for the first time, and I've been at DRCOG almost 7 years, and we have not done one of these since I've been there, is a plan focused on those active transportation issues in our region and understanding how the region can build the best possible network of active transportation facilities. And so we would certainly anticipate that you all would be engaged with that, and obviously your perspective would be very much appreciated. And then another thing that we do at DRCOG that gets a lot of press and I think is a really great program is our Bike to Work Day program, which happens pretty much every June. The second largest in the country. Another sort of kudos for you all. Longmont has historically been a major supporter and an active supporter of this, including a city-sponsored bicycle station. So we would certainly encourage you to, as we're gearing up for the planning of that event, to stay engaged and involved. Not only has the city participated, but there have been dozens of bike stations located throughout the city during the Bike to Work Day event. And the other thing that will be the headline for 2017 and into 2018 and even 2019 that I'm sure Joan will spend quite a bit of time chatting about at the board is what's called our Transportation Improvement Program. So we, as DRCOG, every 4 years or so, have a conversation around the region to understand what our transportation priorities are in terms of spending our very limited and very scarce federal transportation dollars in our region. And so the board will be having a very active conversation this year to determine really what are our priorities going forward in terms of, again, allocating what is ultimately a very scarce resource. So the primary, what I would call policy conversation about how the board will evaluate and select projects is really going to happen over the course of the next 9 months or so, including a brand new approach to how we actually evaluate and select projects. Typically, it's been very centralized. Everyone's in the regions determines applications, submits projects to Dr. Cog, and we evaluate and score projects, and the board ultimately makes the decision as to what to fund. Now we're going to go to a more decentralized approach where ultimately sub-regions, typically thinking about that as sort of county geographies, will be coming to the Dr. Cog Board of Directors with a recommendation as to how they would ultimately choose to spend the money in their own communities. And so that's something that we will also be working through the details on that over the next year or so. And with that, that's sort of, again, the short version. I would encourage you, if you're interested in the plan, you'd be better served reading it than me trying to explain it to you. It's dreadfully boring, but I will tell you, it was. We spent a lot of time on it. The board was very engaged. It's one of those things where a collaborative conversation is always a harder conversation, but you ultimately end up with a better product, and we're convinced that we did in fact do that this time around. So I'm happy to answer questions, or as Erin mentioned, she can certainly send along the presentation if it's of interest.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Thank you, Brad. That was a very, very good presentation. I liked it. Actually, I came in on the end of this, and I think that Councilman Santos was probably there at the onset of MetroVision. But I really think this is good. This is a good plan for us, and I like it as basically as a reference to what we can do. And I feel like Longmont is making progress just in our MCC for working with other communities on fast tracks. And also I have met with 2 or 3 council people from other cities, and they are in our region, and they're very interested in getting together and looking at future regional problems and how can we address them together rather than everybody rewriting the book on their own. So I want to thank you for this. It's very interesting, and I'm very excited to move forward with it.
Great. Thank you for those kind words.
Any other questions from council? All right. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it.
Thank you for giving us a few minutes in your very busy agenda. Hope you're not here too late.
Okay, now it's time for public invited to be heard. And our first person is Quinn Finn.
Do you need me to state my name?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Quinn Finn, and I live at 9 Sunset Circle in Old Town Longmont. Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am the daughter of Patty and Kent McDonald. I grew up at 422 Pratt Street, and I'm a lifelong resident of Longmont. I wanted to take this opportunity to express my deep displeasure with the city's decision to cut down a beautiful 40-year-old mature cottonwood tree at 422 Pratt, simply because a couple of neighbors, including a former member of this council, have squawked long enough and loud enough. Allowing this decision to go forward without public comment would be unconscionable to me. My parents are kind and welcoming people, and they have tried to be good stewards to this community, the environment, and especially this tree. Continuing forward, I would implore this council to live up to the city's moniker of Tree City, USA, and stop the removal of the cottonwood tree at 422 Pratt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Aaron Dawn, or Daw?
My name is Erin Daw, and I am representing my parents, Kent and Patty McDonald of 422 Pratt Street. Good evening, my name is Erin Daw, and I'm here to represent my parents. Please save the cottonwood tree. My parents bought and planted 3 trees to represent each of their 3 daughters 38 years ago. They planted this tree in its location as they did not realize that the portion beyond the sidewalk was a city right-of-way. This area was burning from no shade, as well as paint on their home bubbling and blistering from the hot sun. The trees were purchased from a nursery in town as cottonless, or male trees, non-producers. The trees grew for almost 2 decades before, to our surprise, they started to produce cotton. An arborist stated that trees occasionally changed their gender. So for about 5 weeks a year, 35 days out of 365, it is releasing cotton. This is also when some complaints began. The city evaluated the tree, and as far as we were told, the tree was left to grow because of the policy ordinance stating that if a nuisance tree was large, mature in age, and had trunk diameter larger than 24 inches, along with professional opinions of the Forestry Division, it was recommended that it be left alone, and it was. So why now? Why, after close to 4 decades of shade and beauty and sentimental value, have they determined the tree must go? Why this tree? There are plenty of cottonwoods in Longmont, also on city property. Why use city money to cut down a healthy tree that has been here for 38 years, especially when Longmont only has enough money to treat about 900 of its 3,000 ash trees with the EAB injections? Why spend $3,500 to $8,500 for tree and stump removal? The answer? Living next to ex-city councilmen who are leading up this outcry for the destruction and know who to ask to rewrite policies. I don't find this ethical. Why not choose to save this tree and use that money to treat another 35 to 40 ash trees that otherwise would go without treatment due to lack of forestry funding? Why not choose to save this tree? Mature trees and landscaping add to the value of one's home and neighborhood. Cottonwoods are not to blame for allergies alone. There are many trees pollinating at the same time as cottonwoods, including ash trees and junipers, which Thompson Park and our neighborhood have a great deal of. So where do you draw the line? Do we just cut down old trees because old trees produce mess? Most trees, along with grasses, molds, dust, and weeds, are also responsible for allergies, asthma, and eye irritations. Do the right thing. Choose to say no to removal and destruction of this beautiful, healthy, and majestic tree. To borrow a quote from the Dr. Seuss book, The Lorax, just let it grow. Save the cottonwood tree, if you please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Regan Geffels. Oh. Go ahead, Eugene.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. I apologize for interrupting public invited to be heard, but I wanted to raise a legal issue to City Council's attention. As you may know, reading the paper, we do have a preliminary injunction hearing on the cottonwood tree tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. My advice to Council is not to engage the public in conversation in order to maintain the integrity of our case that we will present tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Hi,
Go
my
ahead,
name's
Regan.
Reagan. Sorry, I don't
Reagan.
really have anything prepared, so bear with me. I'm also talking about the tree against advice of council. I just wanted to come out because I'm also a lifelong Longmont resident. I grew up here, went to school in Boulder, moved away, and decided to come back. I decided to come back to raise my kids here because of many things, because Longmont has changed so much, because Longmont has become this progressive, wonderful, unique place to be, which is much different than when I grew up. But I also came back because Longmont is the same place that I grew up in. It is a place of family, a place of neighbors, a place of cottonwoods. And that sounds really goofy, but when I came back here, I thought, how did I get by without watching the corn grow? And how did I get by without watching the cotton fall? Because this is Longmont. This is who we are. Now, I know Quinn and Aaron, I just watched them give very reasonable justifications for not cutting down the tree, but I just wanted to stand up here and give a personal reason, which I think we all need to really listen to. My children, who are here, and my daughter Reese actually wants to say something, they wake up every day, and frankly, we hear horrible news. We hear Donald Trump wants to cut Meals on Wheels, and we hear he wants to get rid of food services for children, and they're 10, so they're taking this all in, and they're in this place where they're wondering, what our government is about and how it can be so evil. And when they woke up and learned about this tree and that there's this perfectly healthy tree that this family loves and that this family has based their family structure on. Their mother is battling cancer and she's been so sick, and they just look at this tree and it's strength for them. And my kids see that and I see that. And I just feel like it's time for the government to make a stand and say, we are Longmont and we are different and we do stand for these things that matter. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Tracy Frazee.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name's Tracy Frazee. I live at 1820 Celestial Lane, and I'm here to talk about the Riderwell property. As a citizen of Longmont and a resident that lives in that surrounding area, I wanted to come and talk about concerns that I have as a citizen and neighbors and people in the surrounding developments have. One is that I have a great concern for the safety of this land that we're considering putting affordable housing on. As we know, there's a Riderwell spill and a benzene contamination of the land. And as a citizen, I have a real concern that we're putting people who are in great need of housing. I think affordable housing is a wonderful thing. There's a great need for it. When you look at the current housing market and all of the changes that are happening so fast, Longmont needs affordable housing. But as leaders in our community and citizens of our city, putting people who have a great need for housing on contaminated land doesn't seem responsible and doesn't seem like a great thing to do for people who want their citizens to be happy and healthy. Their children are going to be playing on that land. They're going to be drinking that water. The other concern I have is where we are, there are no access to bus lines, there's no grocery shopping, there's no gas stations, there's no shopping of any kind. And so we're also putting people who also, again, have a great need for these things in an area where there's nothing, and putting them on top of contaminated land without any access to any resources where they can be successful citizens of Longmont also does not seem very responsible. One reason I moved to Longmont with my husband is because Longmont puts a huge premium on the beauty of Longmont and Colorado. And my last concern really is that this land for so long has been labeled and considered open space because it was purchased with open space funds. And as you all know, the open space funds were voted on by taxpayers because people wanted to conserve the beauty of this land. That's why we all moved here. When we moved here, we looked at truly at every map possible in this area was labeled open space. And we were told by numerous people, we did our research thoroughly. We moved here from Minnesota, so we wanted to make sure we came to a good place. It was all labeled as open space because it was purchased with open space funds. If you go onto the longmontcolorado.gov website under open space properties, on that list of open space properties is the Riderwell. And so when you purchase area and land with open space funds, it then becomes open space. And
thank you.
That's my last word. I just going to put this in real quick. We have a great trust with you guys, and we want to keep that trust going between you and the citizens of Longmont.
Everybody just gets 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Deb Lowry.
I'm Deborah Lowry at 1565 Harlequin Drive. Good evening, Mayor Coombs and council members. I have information for you to take into consideration for future development plans for low-income housing. I did not include all the schools within Longmont, but tried to focus on those schools which are on the east edge of town and the west edge of town, where there is vacant land. I ask you to begin to look at the packet I have assimilated for you from Colorado School Grades. This is an organization of 18 nonprofits who input data into an easy-to-read format directly from the Colorado Department of Education, and further, I was able to confirm it with the school district. On the first page, you will see the local high schools, Eastside Longmont with an overall grade of an F, Westside Silver Creek with an overall grade of a C+, and Longmont with an overall grade of C. Just below the overall performance grades is how the school is ranked within the state of Colorado. On the back, you will see the socioeconomic breakdown of each school. Skyline Eastside is showing 51% low income, Silver Creek 20%, Longmont at 40% low income students. Now let's look at the middle schools. As you can see, Eastside Trail Ridge Middle School, the overall performance grade is a C-. Westside Altona has an A, Westview with an overall grade of B. On the back, you can see the percentages for low-income students, starting with Trail Ridge showing 47%, Altona shows 17%, and Westview shows 26%. And the school district reports Eastside Timberline at 86% low-income students. Lastly, let's look at the elementaries which feed into Skyline. By localizing low income into Stonehenge Place, which feeds into Columbine Elementary, the numbers should be shocking but not surprising. They have an overall F for performance and are ranked 989 out of 1,100 elementary schools in the state with a 93% low income student population. Rocky Mountain has a C with 86% low income, Fall River a C+ with 23% low income, and Alpine has a B- with 41% low income. A lot of low income students on the east side. Now let's look at the west side schools which feed into Silver Creek and Longmont High. Blue Mountain has an overall grade of an A with 8% low income, Eagle Crest a B with 36% low income, and Longmont Estates a C- with 37% low income, and the school district reports hygiene at 20% low income. If the east side continues to be saturated with more low income and affordable housing, no one wins. Some of our schools are already on academic probation and in jeopardy of losing some of their state funding. It is all of us as taxpayers who will bear the burden when the school district approaches all of us for another mill levy to increase to cover the loss of state funding. With Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, there is even more risk of losing top performing students who withdraw from their public high school and take their state funded dollars with them. If Boulder County is looking to Longmont to fulfill a need for more low-income housing, it may be time to determine if Longmont is really the right community to have to provide additional low-income housing. I believe we as a community have gone above and beyond to help provide for this need. If Longmont does need more low-income housing, this type of project should be spread out over several areas and feed into many schools. Please do not continue to bombard the east side with the types of high-density projects which obviously have a negative impact on our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dev Elzinga.
My name is Dev Elzinga. I live at 902 3rd Avenue. I'm here to support the Longmont Ice Pavilion. I know that it might close down indefinitely due to problems with the concrete. I think if it happened, a lot of people would be let down, including myself. I learned how to skate at the Longmont Ice Pavilion. I have played hockey there for more than 5 years. During the skating season, I'm at the rink 3 times a week for hockey, but I also go almost every day to skate. A lot of my friends do the same thing. It has become our second home. We are friends with the skate guards, and all of the staff members know our names. I have made lots of new friends because of the rink. These other kids go to different schools than I do, live in different neighborhoods, and are even in different grades. I probably would have never met them without the rink. I feel safe at the rink and feel like everybody is always looking out for me. The rink is very close to my house. I can get there by myself. If the rink were to close, I'd be forced to have someone drive me to a place much farther away. I'm sure I wouldn't get to skate as much as I have over the past few years. I really hope that whatever needs to be fixed at the ice rink is fixed as soon as possible. I hope that the rink opens up again next year at the same time as it usually does. If it didn't, I'd be very disappointed and sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Elzinga?
My name is Hans Elzinga. I also live at 902 3rd Avenue, and I'm here to support the Longmont Ice Pavilion as well. As anyone who ice skates knows, it's very special to get to skate outside. The Longmont Ice Pavilion is extremely special in that you can skate with views of snow-capped peaks in the background. How many places in the entire world can say that? It is a truly special place in many other ways. Through its skating and hockey programs, it builds community by bringing together groups of people who might never have met otherwise. Not only has my son Dev made multiple friends through the rink's hockey programs, but I have as well. As Dev said, it provides a safe place for children and adolescents to socialize. Not only is this outdoors, but it is doing a healthy activity. It is supervised and available to them after school and on weekends. What other places are there like this for teens and preteens in our town? What would happen if it were no longer available? The ice rink has been around for more than 10 years. It has had steady growth after a somewhat slow and difficult start. It has been at least a break-even proposition for several years. This is even with the current accounting strategy that does not, to my understanding, give any monetary credit to the rink for city rec pass holders who have unlimited use as part of their pass and use it frequently. I can only imagine if a percent of the pass proceeds, something that captured the percent of visits that a pass holder had at the rink, compared with their use of the rec center or pools, etc., were to be added in. I wouldn't be surprised if there were many other families like ours who have many, if not the majority, of their rec visits at the rink. If the rink were to close, even for just one season, all of that growth would likely be lost. People would go elsewhere to play hockey or to learn to skate. Birthday parties and special event rentals of the rink would go elsewhere. The winter holidays, parade of lights, wouldn't be the same. Not only would it take a long time to get that back, but our community, our children, would be without all of the programs and public skating that the rink offers. There are many families that can't afford to send their kids to play hockey in Boulder or Windsor or Greeley, or can't get their kids to practices or games 30 minutes or more away from Longmont. It appears that the concrete slab at the Roosevelt Park Pavilion will need fixing regardless of whether there is an ice rink there or not. The ice rink is an incredible asset to our community and to our children in particular. The upcoming study will tell us how much it will cost to make repairs. No matter what, every effort needs to be made to have a place for ice skating and hockey in Longmont for the next season. A plan needs to be in place as soon as possible, and I hope that the ice pavilion will be a priority for our city council and that other projects that might be able to wait more easily might be put on the back burner or at least completed at a later date so that the ice rink can open again this November. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Johnston.
Hi, my name is Brian Johnston. I reside at 926 Kaufman Street. I'll be very quick about this, but I just wanted to speak in regards to tonight's second hearing in regard to the ordinance for marijuana grow operations. And after reading the new ordinance and seeing them bring in the patient perspective and bring all groups to the table and work together, I just kind of have to applaud the council and staff for the version they've come up with and are doing the second reading of tonight. Patients' rights are protected while the issues involving public safety and building codes are addressed, as well as the odor mitigation that, you know, respects others' property rights. And, you know, in contemporary politics, there's, you know, especially at the federal level, it's very much become a zero-sum game where if one side wins, the other side loses. And you don't get a lot of instances of everyone bringing all players to the table and getting input from everyone, and it resulting in public policy that solves the issues that we're attempting to be solved while not having inadvertent effects like the first one did on patients' rights. And I just want to say thanks to everyone and that you did a very excellent job on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian Rhodes.
Hi, I'm Jillian Rhodes at 3002 75th Street in Boulder, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Ice Pavilion. Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. I am a former resident of Longmont, but currently I am one of the hockey coaches on staff. My family has been skating at the Ice Pavilion for the last 10 years, having date nights playing drop-in, teaching my kids when they were 2 how to skate, and now watching them all learn how to play hockey. It's kind of a second home to us. Especially the last 2 years, my kids and I have gone through a rough time, family-wise, and the rink is our home. Every coach has picked them up when they've been crying. They've picked them up when we've had tough times. But what is really remarkable about this place, and from my past, is that I have been coaching since I was 15, so it's been 25 years. Don't do the math. I was the first and the youngest female ever to be certified in Colorado with USA Hockey. So hockey truly is my life. It is something I love, and it's something I treasure. I have had the privilege of starting girls hockey, coaching from this big all the way to this big to nationals. And this program has been the best year. And I can tell you because it's not about championships, it's not about trophies, it's about the game. It's about skating, it's the experience, it's about kids that may not have a home to have a home. It's just amazing. The other thing that's remarkable about it is that we have kids that are this big to adults that this big that all they want to do is to learn, to play, and have fun. And what we've done this year has been one of those. We have now seen kids that normally wouldn't have had a chance to play on big-time teams, making high school teams, moving on to travel teams, to just programs that you would never expect them to play in. And that's what the gift that we can give to them. If the ice rink goes away, we will lose everything that we have built this last year, and it will take a lot to get it back. We are also really, truly lucky in that we have a diverse group. We also have kids that come back and want to help coach. The same kids have come out like 5 nights a week just to help us out. I fell in love with the game 30 years ago when someone saw something in me and wanted me to coach and to play. And I want to make sure we give that opportunity to others. So, in the words of Coach Bob Johnson, it's a great day for hockey. Let's make it a great day tomorrow, or a great day the next day to follow for Longmont and their surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beth Wolin, or Wolin?
Good evening. I'm here this evening to speak about the tree on Pratt Street. It's my understanding
You need to start by giving us your address, please.
Oh, 440 Pratt Street. I live very close to the tree.
Okay.
It's my understanding that it is the city policy to remove all cotton trees that produce, excuse me, I'm nervous, to remove all trees that produce cotton from the city limits, as they are defined as a nuisance. It's my understanding that the city has right-of-way to the front of our homes, which we all water, mow, clean, rake, and take care of. This includes the tree and trees on that land. My experience with this event has been very interesting. I find that in the 34 years that I have lived at my address, that this cotton plugs up my lawnmower, air conditioner, air vents, screens, furnaces, and is difficult to clean up. It is devastating to flower gardens and vegetable gardens. 2 neighbors in my neighborhood had health problems brought on by the cotton. One had to move out of town for 2 to 4 weeks every year in order to avoid the breathing problems that he had. You will not be seeing these people here because they have both died since. That doesn't have anything to do with the trees. I was just thinking of them. The city has spent I don't know how many dollars to spray down the tree so we don't have the cotton, to hand pick the tree so we don't have cotton, to inoculate the tree to prevent production of cotton. All have failed. It also disrespects health issues that other people in the neighborhood have. It pits one neighbor against another when this is a decision that the city should be making on their own policies. It is time for the city to step up and follow their own policy to remove the nuisance trees from properties within the city limits and plant the tree they have already waiting for a new home, which is a cottonless cottonwood, and I've seen pictures of it, and is absolutely beautiful. It is time to move on, and we would appreciate your thinking of the other people in the neighborhood who have not been considered for the last 34 years. Thank you very much.
Celine Diaris.
Good evening. My name is Selene Diaris. I live at 1005 3rd Avenue. And I recently saw the article in the paper about this tree and decided that I, as a local resident, wanted to step up and speak up. And interestingly, today I drove by the tree and saw the Lorax image on the tree and knocked on the neighbor's door and learned of this gathering tonight. So that's why I'm here, to speak for the voiceless tree. I first want to say that we call a tree a nuisance as a very abhorrent notion to me to begin with. Cottonwoods are a native tree of Colorado, and in fact are the only native deciduous tree in Colorado. That we would label a tree as a nuisance is a sort of an insight to how we are viewing our relationship to our native ecosystem. It's out of balance. We are in the face of climate change. A native tree is more likely to weather the changing ecosystem outcomes that we're all facing than trees that are non-native. Additionally, many of our non-native trees we already know are imperiled by the bugs that are, whatever, that's the elm tree, I guess, that are in danger, ash trees. I guess I would ask you to, legal counsel, in your arguments tomorrow, to think more broadly than the limited thinking that has created the idea that a tree is a nuisance. I really encourage you to think deeply that we would even think that way at all. We label other native species of Colorado as a nuisance as well. We have a lot to evolve collectively if we want to actually have a more harmonious, healthy community in Colorado going into the future as we deal with a lot of challenges. A tree that you're going to spend an enormous amount of money to remove. I just had to have a beautiful old tree that had fallen down in my yard dealt with. I think the recommendation from one of the daughters that that money be allocated towards treating trees that are endangered in our urban forest be put above removing a healthy, beautiful tree in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Matthew Diaris.
Yeah, Matthew Diaris. I also live at 1005. That's my wife. My family moved here in 1967. And during my 40 or so, or 50 years, I guess more, nobody's counting, I've seen some, what I consider pretty odd relationships between people and the land and the animals here. I remember when I was a teenager, this family moved to the foothills, and they had their dog out on the porch at night. And one night they left some meat out for their dog. Well, a mountain lion jumped on their porch and ate their dog. And I'm an animal guy, so I felt their pain. Animals in my family are people. But at the same time, I talk to my buddies, I talk to my colleagues, I talk to everybody. I talk to my parents, I talk to my parents' friends. Not one person said anything other than, oh my gosh, they left some meat on their porch. The lion jumped into the porch and ate the dog. That's how life is. I think when you move to Colorado, you accept that Colorado's different than New York. And that's what mountain lions do. I'm not trying to be callous to people who have allergies or people who have pets, but the cottonwood is part of being a Coloradan. And I was thinking today, what if, bald eagles started eating people's cats, and they do that sometimes, the smaller cats. Somebody came out and said, bald eagles are a nuisance, let's get rid of all them eagles. I think everybody would see that that's ridiculous. The eagle is a symbol of our country. But I feel like the cottonwood the columbine, the mountain lion. Those are our eagles. And, you know, life is dangerous, but we got to stand up for our symbols, for our values. Thank you.
Edwina Salazar.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and members of City Council. I'm Edwina Salazar. I'm the Executive Director of the Our Center at 220 Collier Street. I'm speaking on item 8F, the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and Boulder County for the provision of short-term counseling and crisis intervention services. I want to thank the city and the county for partnering to base these services at the Our Center. It's been 2 years since the Our Center has had any counseling services, so they've been sorely missed by the participants of our services. We have many people in need of the services, with anything from anxiety to depression to the major mental illnesses. And I think you probably are aware that people who are homeless suffer disproportionately from major mental illness. So with this partnership, the person will be based at the Our Center full-time and will go a long way to assuring access for mental health services, behavioral health to low-income individuals and families with limited access. So I think this is an example of city, county, and nonprofit world working together to provide a very much needed service. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Mitski.
My name is Carol Mitchke, and I live at 414 Pratt Street. I'm here also to talk about the tree. And I respect that the attorney has indicated that this is perhaps not the best venue for having public content. So I would ask if that is still acceptable that we continue.
Yes.
Absolutely. Public invited to be heard is to get public input.
I have sent an email to the city attorney, so I think he has a lot of our feelings about it. The one thing that I will say that as I've sat here and listened to everyone, I think it's very unique from the standpoint that the people who are here supporting or trying to have the city refrain from cutting down the tree are not the people who live in the block in that neighborhood. They don't experience the things that we experience. Just a couple of things I'll mention. When my kids were little, the cotton would accumulate in the street and gutter so much that when they would be out there on the 4th of July playing with their sparklers and their little fountains, the cotton would start on fire in the gutter. I think it's a miracle that no grass fires started and probably no house fires. The cotton in some years is extremely dense. Also, it has disrupted the sidewalk. We've seen people trip over it because the tree is planted so close to the public sidewalk that it has elevated it, and we've seen people trip and fall. I think that that is potentially a hazard too. I love trees. I have nothing against them. I just don't like this tree because of, what we've had to live with. And we respect the McDonald's. We respect the daughters. We're so sorry that it has come to this. There's been complaints, as I understand, lodged with the city for close to 20 years or longer on this tree. I think it's very sad that after the tree started producing cotton, a few short years after it was planted, the neighbors who were experiencing the medical difficulties offered at that time to transplant the tree with a different tree that would not have the same implications, and that unfortunately was rejected. It would be so nice if this had been put behind us 30-some years ago. It's really divided the neighborhood. And, there's other things that we've experienced as owners. Mary Beth has mentioned some of those. The cotton, when you have rain after the cotton is, we have it in our screens. It's pasted to our cars. It's pasted to any outside belongings that we have. We don't even eat outside when the cotton's flying because all we'd be doing, in a lot of respects, is eating or drinking cotton. And they seem to minimize the impact because they talk about it shedding cotton for about 5 weeks of the year. But if you consider the time frame from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is typically considered summer, that's half the summer that we cannot have peaceful enjoyment of our property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patty Malfetti.
Hi, Mayor Coombs. I'll be speaking for Patty. Okay. Wilbert Talmadge. We live at 1110 Baker Street. This is regarding 11B, the RV vehicles parked on the street. 2 months have gone by since we first addressed the issue of the junk vehicle on our street. You've had ample time to come up with possible solutions to the problem. The options you have chosen to pursue in the study, which will be presented later tonight, are as follows. Option 1 would prohibit all trailers, any kind, from parking when detached from a vehicle. What happens when they are attached? How long can they be parked in the same location? How will you enforce this? When can you make them move? We feel strongly that a move-along clause must be enforced so that any vehicle which is being lived in on the streets will need to be moved 2 blocks every 24 hours, not returning to the same location for 30 days. Regarding option 3, taking of the word unattended or attended out of the code, we need more information on this. Does this make it easier to tow a junk vehicle? It appears that this study made some very good suggestions, but it is opting to barely implement anything of value, which puts us right back to where we started. Man up, Longmont.
Shelley Bassman.
My name is Shelley Bassman. We live at 3414 Lakeview Circle in Longmont. I see that there's a request before you to request legislative position of support on a bill down in the legislature. I request another legislative support from Longmont, and it is for HB 171256, introduced by Representative Mike Foote. It would clarify the setback from schools that the COGCC in its wisdom increased from 350 feet to 1,000 feet. It would clarify that this is not from the building itself, but from the school property line, because the industry in its the industry has proceeded to put wells 1,000 feet from the building, right next to playgrounds, athletic fields, running tracks. I said playgrounds. Anyway, this is an issue in which Longmont has a stake and a deep interest. So I request that the city, and it's up for hearing on Thursday. And Mike Foote, if nobody can go down there, I think you can email, you can call, Longmont can support this, and it needs to be done. And secondly, I'm here on behalf of Tree. It's really sad to hear what's happened in the neighborhood. But this so-called administration in Washington is working really hard to deconstruct the EPA and to defund climate change science. So it's a logical deduction that we, as citizens at the local level, must step forward and do what we can. Trees absorb CO2. One tree, it doesn't say what size, this is from the Arbor Environmental Alliance, can absorb 48 pounds of CO2 in a year. Now, CO2 is pretty light, so it's a lot. Trees give shade to heat sinks, which are roads, sidewalks, roofs, buildings, and can cool the area by 10 to 20 degrees. Planting trees, it says, and keeping trees is one of the cheapest, most effective means of drawing excess CO2 from the atmosphere. And it's already over. I hope you haven't decided what you're going to do tomorrow morning, and we'll listen to, and we'll take into account those of us who object to taking down a tree because, and cottonwood does not cause allergies. Anyone who
Thank
has
you.
allergies does not get it from cotton.
Carolyn Grundy.
Caroline Grundy, 156 11th Avenue. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. I am here tonight to speak about the general business item regarding on-street RV parking. First, I would like to say thank you to City Council for listening to our grievances over the past couple of months and for directing City staff to work on this issue. I would also like to thank City staff for creating a thoughtful proposal. I do have several concerns regarding the proposal. I am bringing them to your attention in hopes that these concerns are addressed later on this evening. Firstly, I'm concerned that the outline does not offer a definition of an RV. This is something Councilmember Santos brought to City staff's attention a few meetings back. For example, a Winnebago can be 30 to 40 feet and self-operable. Under the staff's recommendations, it would be allowed to stay in one location indefinitely because it is operable. And furthermore, a tiny house is often considered an RV, but if a tiny house is attached to an operable vehicle, then it would be permitted to be parked in one location indefinitely as well. Secondly, I'm concerned that the staff is not recommending a move-along clause. Really, for any vehicle parked on public streets in Longmont, not just RVs. There are suggestions in this outline to address the issues of vehicles parked indefinitely in front of homes. One being option 3C, which states, add language to abandoned vehicle ordinance defining how far a camper must be moved, with the sub-options 3C1 stating move more than 1 block from current position, and 3C2 stating RV cannot return to the same location for 30 days. These options are not recommended by the staff, and the cons stated are would potentially affect more residents and businesses by relocating the RV to a different neighborhood or commercial area each day, and because it could complicate existing workload issues for enforcement staff. So, thinking about my personal situation, and I would like to encourage you to imagine that a 30-foot vehicle could be parked in front of your home indefinitely, with your only defense to be to call code enforcement and the police and watch them come by, when they can, to chalk the tires of the vehicle to see if it has moved an inch. Under this current proposal, any vehicle, RV, of any size, as long as it is operable or is attached to a vehicle that is operable, can remain in one area indefinitely. I understand the concern for the administrative burden, but please recognize that not all campers' RVs need to be enforced, but only the ones that are an issue to the neighborhood. It does not seem right that a move-along clause has not been strongly recommended by the staff. I would hope that City Council introduce option 3C1 or 3C2 into ordinance. Thank you. Again, thank you for your time and consideration to this matter.
Thank you. Reese Giffels.
How would you let her use her mic, Sean? Yeah. Have a seat, Sean.
I'm Reese Giffels, and I'm here to also talk about the tree. It's a very important matter to friends of mine that are like family to me. This tree isn't just a tree. It's something that can't be replaced. It's full of memories, and it shouldn't be cut down because it's just wrong. Trees give us life, and it gives this family hope when they're struggling. And I just feel like if this one family can make a difference for not having their tree to be cut down, then maybe I can too. And I really care about trees, and puppies are cute.
Thank you. Maggie Giffords?
So, I'm her sister. I'm Maggie.
And what's your address?
8664 Portico Lane.
Thank you.
And I was here to talk about the tree too. I just kind of think it's unfair that they're cutting it down because it wasn't really the family's fault in the first place. Because as they said, they tried to buy one that wouldn't put cotton everywhere, but it ended up doing that. But it's still not their fault that it happened. But they're still cutting the tree down, even though, and they really love the tree. And also, it's not really the tree's fault that anything of this have happened, because it didn't really, try to, it's not like its fault that it changed gender. It's kind of how the world goes. It's it's really weird, though. So I just don't think that any of this should be happening, because it's, unfair to all of them, because they didn't really try to make this happen, or were, purposely having this happen, and it was just a coincidence. And yeah, yay.
Thank you. Alex Maury.
Be 1 minute.
Yeah.
I promise I'll keep it to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Mayor Coombs and council members. Okay, so they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I'm going to share a few pictures with you because I understand how people feel about the tree. We've lived next to it for 13 years. Others in the neighborhood have lived next to it for 30-plus years. We've worked hard with the city, and just as a point of clarification, I want to make sure, because it was mentioned before that I can pull strings, I have not contacted any of you or discussed this subject with you at all. Okay? So we've been working closely with the forestry department for over 12 years. In the last 5 years, the efforts have been to inject the tree to mitigate the cotton. For 2 years in a row, that didn't help. They sent, I'm going to show you some pictures while I'm doing this. So you can see the cotton collecting on the steps. I don't know why yours is coming up too. We see it. Okay. Well, there's tons of pictures. So anyway, I was going to show you what it looks like before the cotton happens and what it looks like after the cotton happens. So we've been working closely with the forestry department for 12 years. In the last 5, we've had them inject the tree because they said that might stymie the growth or potential production of cotton. That didn't work. They sent a fire truck to douse it from above to knock down the pods. That didn't work. Last year, they sent a trimming truck, and they trimmed it, and they tried to handpick as many of the pods as they could. That didn't work. The problem is twofold. It kills plants. It devalues the property, the homes, actually. I mean, the beautiful trees are, yes, added value. But during the summer months, when this is high selling season, nobody's going to walk up to the house and buy it when it looks like that. The other thing that we took into consideration was the neighbors' feelings, because the tree is important to them. We wanted to work with the forestry department to make sure that any replacement was mature enough and large enough that it would provide the shade that they need. So here's a picture that I will pass around to you of the recommended replacement. It is mature. It is 25 feet tall. It's a cottonwood that's cottonless. And cottonwoods, since they are native to this land, grow very fast.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that ends first call, public invited to be heard. Let's take a 5-minute break. Well, we got a pretty big agenda tonight, so and we've hardly gotten started on it. So could we everybody take their seats and we can resume our meeting? Polly. Okay.
Are you ready for your consent agenda?
Go ahead with the consent
First
agenda.
one is item 8A, ordinance 2017-17, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the First Congressional United Church of Christ rezoning from residential low density R1 to high density residential high density R3, generally located at the northwest corner of Francis Street and 9th Avenue. Introduction and first reading of the ordinance scheduled for April 11th. Item 8B is ordinance 2017-18, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the Nova annexation, generally located north of Nelson Road and west of Dry Creek Drive, and zoning the property R3 residential high density. Public hearing scheduled for April 11th. Item 8C is ordinance 2017-19, a bill for an ordinance amending chapters 1504 and 1505 of the Longmont Municipal Code concerning affordable housing. Public hearing scheduled for April 11th. Item 8D is ordinance 2017-20, a bill for an administrative ordinance approving the Town of Lyons contract to buy and sell real estate for the conveyance of the city's north and south water treatment plant properties to the Town of Lyons. Public hearing scheduled for April 11th. Item 8E is Resolution 2017-14, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Boulder County for the Youth Corps program services in 2017. Item 8F is Resolution 2017-18, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Boulder County for the provision of short-term counseling and crisis intervention services. Item 8G is Resolution 2017-19, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the City of Boulder as the lead agency for the Boulder-Broomfield Regional Home Consortium for a subrecipient agreement for home funds. Item 8H is Resolution 2017-20, to join the Healthy Eating and Active Living Heal Cities and Towns campaign. Item 8I, Resolution 2017-21, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and East Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation District, Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority, and United Water and Sanitation District for short-term water supply. Item 8J is Resolution 2017-22, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the St. Vrain and Left Hand Water Conservancy District for a short-term water exchange. Item 8K is Resolution 2017-23, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and St. Vrain Valley School District, RE1J, for irrigation system improvements on Spring Gulch No. 2. Item 8L is Resolution 2017-24, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the Board of Governors of the Colorado State University System for research at Ralph Price Reservoir. Item 8M is there's two items associated with that. First is Resolution 2017-25, approving the agreement for a sewer tap outside city limits between the City and JSS LLC, and Resolution R 2017-26, approving the agreement for a water tap outside city limits between the City and JSS LLC, and these are both at 9800 North 119th Street. Item 8N is Resolution 2017-27, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Boulder County for the potential purchase of the Montgomery Farm property. Item 8O is Resolution 2017-28, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the State of Colorado Judicial Department for the provision of a list of potential jurors. Item 8P is Resolution 2017-29, approving the intergovernmental agreements with the City and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the City of Lafayette, the City of Thornton, and the Town of Frederick for firing range and training center use. Item 8Q is Resolution 2017-30, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Loveland Fire Rescue Authority for a mutual aid agreement. Item 8R is Resolution 2017-31, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Red Rocks Community College for an affiliation agreement to permit clinical training.
Item 8S is Resolution 2017-32, approving the agreement between the city and Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck LLP for special counsel services. Item 8T is approved 2017 neighborhood improvement grants. Item 8U is appoint and reappoint affordable housing technical review group members for 2017. Item 8V is change Donetto Russell from an alternate member to a regular member on the Master Board of Appeals. Item 8W is request legislative position of support on HB 171229 concerning when a worker may be compensated for a mental impairment for a psychologically traumatic event under workers' compensation. And staff would like to pull items D, N, and S for a short presentation.
Mayor, we would also need to pull M because of the voting piece from council. I think Councilmember Bagley recused himself on the last vote on that one.
Okay. E, M, N, S.
Okay. Yes. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd like to move the consent agenda minus D, M, N, and S.
All right. Second. It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Oops. That passes 7-0.
Okay, Mayor Coombs, moving on to second reading items. First is ordinance 2017-11, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of gas, electric, sanitary sewer, water line, public access, non-buildable, and utility easements generally located in the Creekside Business Park second filing and Creekside Business Park second filing replat A. We do not have a formal staff presentation on this. Aaron is in the audience to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, so if there's no questions from council, I'll now open up the public hearing on ordinance 2017-11. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2017-11. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd like to move ordinance 2017-11.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2017-12, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of right-of-way generally located in the Creekside Business Park second filing. And there, again, there is no formal staff presentation.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 2017-12. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2017-12. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd like to move 2017-12. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2017-13, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of utility and drainage easements generally located in Blue Vista PUD replat A. And there was a minor change, and I believe, were you going to go over that? No. Staff doesn't need to review it unless you have questions.
Is there any questions before I open up the public hearing? Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 2017-13. Does anybody from the public like to speak? All right, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2017-13.
Mayor Coombs, before you begin or make a motion, council will need to substitute the new version for the one that was introduced.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bonnie. Lead us.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move that we substitute the new ordinance for the old ordinance.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs.
You also need a motion then to pass the...
Yeah, Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2017-13.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. That's right. Councilmember Peck? All right, that passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2017-15, a bill for an ordinance approving the amendments to the agreement in furtherance of annexation for the Quail East annexation to the city of Longmont. And Aaron Bostic does not have a presentation on this. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any questions from council before I open up the public hearing? Oh, excuse me.
Did I miss one?
Oh, you're right, you did. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Good catch.
Ordinance 2017-14 is a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of right-of-way generally located in Blue Vista PUD Replat A.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 2017-14. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak? All right, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2017-14. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2017-14.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0. Now we're on to 15.
That is a bill for an ordinance approving the amendment to the agreement in furtherance of annexation for the Quail East annexation. This is the one Aaron has a presentation on.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of City Council, Aaron Fosdick, Planning and Development Services Department. I think this was pulled at the February 28th meeting, and just wanted to advise you that I am here and Kathy is here to answer questions. There was a question related to the CDBG loan, and I did follow up with Kathy. The terms of those, the loan is no longer in existence, and so this is a new project. So the question of whether or not something would need to be paid back doesn't really apply to this project anymore. Basically, what this annexation agreement amendment is requesting is that we reduce the total affordable housing in Blue Vista from 51% to 35%, which would yield a total of 60 affordable housing units that would be deed restricted. And this is something that council discussed with the potential applicant last year at your June 28th meeting, and staff was given direction to look into this as well as a number of other things. So we've been working obviously on the annexation agreement amendments as well as replatting, development plan amendment, and then the vacations that you just saw on second reading. And so with that, Kathy and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on this item.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 2017-15. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2017-15. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd like to move passage of ordinance 2017-15.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
And your next item is ordinance 2017-16, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 9.60 and Chapter 2.97 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding medical and recreational marijuana and administrative civil penalties. And there is no formal staff presentation. Aaron is here to answer questions.
Okay, is there any questions from council before I open up the public hearing? And I do have some people who have signed up. Oh, Councilmember Peck.
I do have one question. We've had a lot of inquiries about common wall homes, condominiums, townhouses, and not just mitigation from odor, but mitigation through vents and property rights. So I was wondering if, and I did read your email, Sean, on that, and it does make sense. The other issue that came up, though, was the water usage in condominiums. There are several units or buildings in our city where the water is shared. Even it's not metered in each individual unit. It is shared by all of the owners, as well as some of them share the electricity. And there have been some concerns about the amount of water and electricity being used and that cost being put throughout the whole condominium unit to all the owners. Did you look at that at all when you were going through making up this ordinance and looking at all the different angles of growing marijuana in common wall homes?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Peck, we did not specifically look at that issue. What we did look at, and one of the main purposes of us looking at this ordinance was to ensure that all appropriate codes are followed, so making sure that if there are modifications to electrical systems or any other type of system, that building code would be followed. Currently we don't look at, on a project-by-project basis, if someone uses, if I take 10 showers per day and you only take one, or if I water my plants more than you do. I mean, I think there's nothing in our proposed ordinance that would preclude an association from doing something different through their covenants. And so we've not put anything in the ordinance that would preclude that, and I think that's typically how we encourage people to deal with those types of issues. Again, our purpose for this ordinance is really, again, the building and associated codes being followed and any modifications to those systems that could result in additional usage, making sure that we have the appropriate permits and inspections for those types of things.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the individual homeowner can address that through the covenants. The HOA can address that through the covenants. Did I understand that correctly?
I think that is one way that could be looked at.
Okay. I have one other issue in that a rental, in order to grow marijuana in a rental, you must have permission from the owner. I didn't see it in the ordinance. Maybe I missed it. Is that a signed permission or is it just verbal?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Peck, the ordinance does indicate that for people growing in a rental property, any lessee or tenant that uses a rental property as their primary residence and cultivates, produces, or processing marijuana shall furnish to the city written notarized, authorized permission from the property owner upon request. So yes, that would be written permission that is notarized that we could request from someone and they would be required to furnish at that time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Question, and that is, Judy Benham, and I'm not necessarily advocating this, but I just wanted to ask the question, why don't we have just this like Fort Collins has in their ordinance? I'm reading Article 9, Cultivation of Marijuana, Section 12-142. It looks like it's the Fort Collins Marijuana Residential Growing Ordinance. And it says, no marijuana plants may be cultivated with any dwelling unit in a two-family, multifamily, or single-family attached dwelling. Meaning that I have no problem with people growing and doing whatever they want. My concerns are always when it begins to impact people living next door. And I'm not talking just about smell. I'm talking about you use a lot of water, not just the cost, but if you've got 99 plants, you're running sprinkler systems. You're doing a lot of farming inside your unit. Not that it would fit necessarily 99 plants in an attached apartment next door. You've also my question would also be one of just you're impacting your neighbors. And so my question is we're hearing public invited to be heard, or not public invited to be heard, just the public at the hearing. My question is, what's the downside for just saying, if you're sharing space, like I wouldn't have a problem if you got written notice from your neighbor. If they don't care, I don't care. But no, but you get it from the property owner, but not the people living next door to you.
Yeah, in the ordinance it says that.
Is it?
Mayor Coombs, Mayor Pro Tem Bagley, and Councilmember Finley, our ordinance does require permission for folks that are renting properties. There are instances where you might have an attached owner unit, and we've intentionally not included provisions similar to what Fort Collins has for a number of reasons. About nearly 40% of Longmont's housing stock is something other than a single-family detached unit. So that could be a duplex, a triplex, a condo, an apartment, something other than a house with 4 walls and a yard. And so what we heard during our outreach is that it's important for people from all living situations, all socioeconomic strata, to be able to exercise this right that the Constitution provides. And so we had some concerns about limiting this to a relatively large portion of our population. And so we feel that with the other protections the ordinance affords in terms of not only odor, but again, going back to those building code issues, which are really front and center in our mind, as well as the protections offered for rental properties and other things that condo associations may choose to put in their covenants that the city wouldn't necessarily have a role in enforcing, that those protections would be there, and that we would really have that balance of protecting people's rights, but also protecting health, safety, and welfare for all Longmont residents.
And I think the ordinance did create a good balance. I guess the last question I'd have to alleviate my concerns and also just fully address the handful of letters that I've gotten. Suppose that there's a violation in code, right? Who enforces it? Code enforcement or the police? Who do people tend to call? I mean, when you call the police, will they show up and say, oh, you need to talk to code enforcement? Or are they going to call code? I mean, I guess what's the process for making sure that the ordinance is actually adhered to? Because what I can see happening is, or what I fear happening, would be police show up and go, oh yeah, this is a code issue. We don't handle this. So how would it work logistically if you're next door to a neighbor and all of a sudden, oh, you're in bed at 10 o'clock at night and you're like, oh man, my neighbors sure do stink.
Mayor Coombs, Mayor Pro Tem Bagley, I think as we heard from Shannon at our last meeting, this is primarily going to be complaint-based. And so we would anticipate that code enforcement would respond to the majority of complaints, although I will say that code enforcement and public safety have a very strong relationship, and we would anticipate through the enforcement of this ordinance that partnership would continue. Officer Sarah Arney's here from Public Safety, and I don't know if she has anything she wants to add in terms of how that response might happen from code enforcement and public safety.
No, I'm good if you're good, but I mean, okay, that resolves my concern. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. In the ordinance, on page 2, it does say you have to have a written, notarized authorization from property owner and all current tenants, but it doesn't address if they're individually owned units. So that is a concern that I have as well, because we do have, if there's a row of 4 townhouses and they're all individually owned, then there's no process to have those other people in the attached dwelling give authorization. And I think we need that in this ordinance.
Well,
I hate to bring that up at the 11th hour, but I think that's...
I guess I'm going to be the devil's advocate on that. I mean, we don't want to step on the state's rule which says that, people have the right to grow marijuana. And if they own your own dwelling and if they're, responsible owners and they've met all the codes and they're not bothering their neighbors with, smells, and they're not, condo owners, their utilities are individual. They're not shared. And, I just don't think you should step on those owners' abilities to grow 6 plants. Obviously, the HOA of that could have, if it's going to be a problem in the HOA, they can address that. But, it's the balance between the individual owners to grow marijuana. I mean, that's why we don't want to get, as a city, crosswise and get into all these lawsuits for a few. I mean, that was pretty much was addressed by, a nice email that was put together by, and, that's why, I thought about that too, but, there's a downside to doing that. So anyway, go ahead. Did you want to address that?
Yes, Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Finley. I did want to just point out as a clarification, this is Teresa Tate. I'm Assistant City Attorney. And I just want to point out as a clarification that that requirement is only for shared common areas. It's not a requirement for every multi-unit dwelling. It's only when you're trying to grow in a shared common area of a multi-family dwelling. And so, and you'll notice that that's pretty specifically stated in 2B.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. You know, at the NGLA meeting on Thursday, that was when it was brought up to me by some of the condominium owners that the older units actually don't have, they have shared water. They're not individually metered like the new condominiums. So it does affect them with electricity and with water. I just wanted to make that statement because different building codes, different eras when things were built, it will affect them differently. Just
good point.
Just FYI.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not concerned about 6 plants. I mean, like we're seeing, I think they might have left, but like, I mean, the laws that I'm always concerned about are the ones that only impact a couple people. You know, I mean, here in Longmont, for example, junk vehicles, you know, 99.9% of us, we're good with the ordinance. We're always having to deal with those outlying situations and figure out how to tweak the law so that we preserve our liberties and freedom, but still don't have really terrible situations come up because the fact pattern just happens to be, you know, weird. And so my concern would be, you know, someone, a caregiver growing in a multi-residential unit, and then, you know, safety issues. You know, those are my concerns. And so my concern would be, does it, if my neighbors had a substantial growing operation going on and I owned my condo and they moved in, or let's suppose it's 3 units and they bought the ones on either side and the HOA said, we're going to allow this, I wouldn't be too happy. And so I guess my question is it feasible or is it unreasonable to say, yeah, if you're connected to somebody, you need their permission before you start growing? Is that unreasonable? Is it bad? Is it against the law? Does it make people upset who are advocates for this? Those are my questions.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Bagley, that's a great question, and it is something that our committee has looked at pretty closely. Specifically looking at the Fort Collins ordinance, we felt like, and our attorneys felt like it was very open to challenge in that there is a significant portion of our population that doesn't live in single-family attached dwellings, and so if you, by ordinance, basically excluded something to the effect, you know, between 20 and 40% of your population from being able to grow, or put additional restrictions on them that weren't available or weren't required of single-family homes, you would essentially be creating a discriminatory situation where folks who were in attached, like townhomes or condos, could actually challenge the fact that they were being discriminated against by the city by having additional requirements. In addition, because the ordinance is complaint-based, the concerns that have been brought up about smell or unpermitted water or energy usage could be handled through the process outlined in the ordinance.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time. Looks like Angel Hayes. Excuse me.
Good evening. I'm Angel Hayes. I live at 800 Lincoln Street, Unit G in Longmont. And I'm here to actually, after hearing some of the questions, I actually want to talk a little bit about some of that. I was the one who brought up at the first hearing the attached home issue. Good evening. First of all, forgot to say that. And there's the saying, when you know better, you do better. And I feel like I've done everything I can to alert council of the dangers of allowing marijuana growing to exist in attached homes in the city of Longmont. I sent emails citing articles regarding fire danger and other risks involved. The fire danger can include overloaded electrical circuits, as well as if someone gets into hash oil. I mean, there's hash oil explosions that have happened all over the state of Colorado. Fires as well. And you won't know if an electrical circuit is overloaded until there's a fire. And if that happens next door to me, that could mean my life. So it matters to me. I don't think it's a small, I understand what you were saying about segments, you know, laws protecting everyone. But some of the articles that I've read from first responders and law enforcement, they've come across numerous, 10 to 12 situations like this a month in Colorado Springs, where there have been fire dangers in homes where marijuana growing exists. So I'm not here with an agenda. I've had a personal experience that dramatically changed my position on this issue entirely, and it would have been irresponsible of me to not have followed through and attempted to educate others. When I voted to legalize marijuana, I didn't realize what was involved with residential growing. When alcohol was legal, that didn't mean you would have a still in your backyard. It meant you could go buy liquor. It didn't mean you could process it in your house. And the tricky part, I know, of being an elected official is remembering that your job is to address the common good. And part of that process is hearing those speaking from a personal point of reference different than your own. I suspect most of you live in single-family homes. You might feel differently about a marijuana grow room adjacent to an infant's bedroom if you were in that type of situation. It's ironic to me to consider removing one tree in the city of Longmont because people have allergies when the tree is outdoors. But it's okay to have a greenhouse in someone's bedroom adjacent to my common wall bedroom. There are allergies to marijuana plants. And if you're concentrating all the plants in a bedroom, that increases that possibility. I'm running out of time. There's much more to growing and cultivating than you're probably aware, and there's a financial incentive to do it legally or illegally. Masking the smell doesn't take away the danger. It's up to you. If you can sleep at night with your decision regarding the effect of those outside of your home, then you've made the right one. I hope you will ensure that we all can do the same. Because honestly, I won't feel comfortable living in my attached condo. I'm a homeowner. My neighbor who had the grow room was a renter. And no one asked my permission if he could do that next door to me. We have shared attic space, so any other toxic fumes are in my house as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Shepard.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Shepard. My office address is 710 11th Avenue, Suite 203D in Greeley. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm on the board for Colorado Normal. I appreciate all the work that the City Council has done. And I am mindful that there are people that still have concerns even with all the work that this body has done. I do believe it can be addressed through the following. Hopefully neighbors can actually talk to each other. If there's a problem, that would be a good way. I understand in some instances that can't happen, but that's a good place to start. Second, I believe that code enforcement can take care of a lot of the concerns. Now, of course, you know, and the dilemma is of course, we want to address a lot of concerns, but at the same time, there was always a tension of how do we balance property rights, and I am mindful that this body has done the best it can to balance all of those. I am aware that within the last few years, the state legislature did make it against the law to do butane extraction, which I think was a good idea because it was, frankly, a fire hazard. I also think that we can address through building codes things like insisting on separate billing for water and electricity if that's needed to where a neighboring person doesn't have to pay excessive costs, whether it's from growing cannabis or growing tomatoes or because you like to take too many long showers. It's only fair that the other party doesn't have to pay that. I think one can do it through building codes. And a good example is when I had my heater replaced, the box with all the fuses from my house built in 1947 had to be replaced, and building codes can address the idea if there's a concern, we can enforce it through the code enforcement. And, of course, since it's a complaint-based system, that if neighbors aren't getting satisfaction through informal means, they can write you. And I think code enforcement people can facilitate people working things out and people upgrading to where that they are responsible. You know, although I live in a single-family home, I live in a neighborhood that's close enough to my neighbors that I don't want them doing anything inappropriate either. But at the same time, maybe it's just a matter of education and attention. And that's all I have, but thank you for all your work, and I urge you to adopt this.
Thank you. Paul Renix.
Good evening, City Council, City staff. Thanks so much for taking the time to do a really thoughtful look at this issue. A couple things about what was mentioned tonight. Water use. One teenager is about equal to 99 plants. As far as shower taking, there really isn't a huge use of water to water a plant. Real plant counts, for the most part, almost everybody is growing 6 or 12 plants. Hash oil is illegal. Those are a couple things. Okay, but I want to go on to what I wanted to do, which is really to thank you for listening, having the chance to be heard through various means in this inclusive process, through public invited to be heard. The first time this was brought up, we ended up with a survey, we ended up with a forum. We saw council taking the time to figure out and protect everyone's needs by creating the forum. Thanks again to each and every one of you. We got a yes vote out of all of you towards this very thoughtful ordinance that takes into consideration every side. City staff impressed the heck out of me the whole way along, communicating with them, asking questions, wondering what's going on. I really, in the last 2 or 3 months watching this happen, I really became proud of my city. And I think that the way this was handled, there are other things that can happen this way too, and I know there already are. And I just, again, I'm proud of y'all, every single one of you, for being so thoughtful and doing this in an impact-based manner, complaint-based manner, let people bring it to the attention of the police. We are handling smell, we're handling code, electricity, fire. It's all been covered. And if there are little things that need to be adjusted, that can be done later. So I urge you to vote yes tonight and let this part be finished, and we can refine as we see issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Ashley Weber, she's requested to speak last, so is there anybody else that would like to speak at this public hearing? All right. Then, Ashley, I guess you're up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ashley Weber, and I am Executive Director of Colorado NORML, which is the National Organization for the Reform of Colorado Marijuana Laws. I'm speaking in regards tonight to the medical and recreational grows here in Longmont. It's reassuring to see how receptive each and every one of you were, and how the city staff worked with the community and worked with the patients individually. It was really great to see how law enforcement, when they do come across these illegal grows, now they will have the ability to do something about them in regards to having to deal with patients and caregivers and treating them as criminals. So I know that there is a bill in Denver that a lot of you probably have been following, and that has to do with home grows as well. And I just want to say that Longmont is definitely the city to be looking towards for language in writing this type of language for the city and for patients and for caregivers and for the community and public safety and law enforcement as well. So I just like to thank each and every one of you for working with us, and I urge you to vote yes.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing unless there's someone else that wants to speak. All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, it's good to hear the feedback from the community about what we've done here and how we've worked cooperatively to come up with a solution. I think we want to make sure we don't lose sight of why this was necessary in the first place. We were getting complaints about odors and activity, and really had no tool to go in there and determine whether or not there was an illegal grow or not. And if we would go back and remember that that's really the impetus behind this, it gives us the tools we need. Is it a perfect ordinance? I would probably challenge anyone to say we have any perfect ordinances in town. But it's a good start, and I think that because we did work collaboratively with the stakeholders involved, I think it's a really good start. And if we have to adjust it, as Mr. Rennick said, we can do that. So,
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. As I just hear, I think it's, I echo a lot of what Councilmember Moore just said, and certainly what members of the public have said. I guess the only tweak I'd suggest right now is that just like we ask apartment owners to approve it, I think that we should ask other owners attached to give their blessing in writing before they proceed to cultivate marijuana in their dwellings. And so I don't want to change it significantly. I just think that if somebody owns a property, they should have a say if they're sharing property value and property space with someone before that proceeds forward. Same concept as the apartment building. And I don't think that's going to have a significant legal impact. It's the same legal theory on the apartment building. And so, what do you think before I make the motion? Please, you stood up.
Mayor Coombs, Mayor Pro Tem Bagley, Teresa Tate from the City Attorney's Office. Again, I'd respectfully disagree with you on that.
I'm asking.
And here's why. I would say that a resident in a rental property is akin to an HOA passing covenants and restrictions. When you rent a property, you agree to whatever restrictions the owner may impose on you. So, for example, they can decide that you cannot have a pet. They could decide that you may not smoke cigarettes. There are a variety of things that they could decide. So it's not necessarily based on the property value so much as it's a covenant between the landlord and the lessee. And so here it is actually a different theory, and my concern would be that the Colorado Constitution actually affirmatively grants a right for each person to grow up to 6 plants. And so my concern would be about curtailing that right.
I get the difference. You've already answered my question. It's a legal distinction, and I can see that. All right, cool. Let's do it.
All right, I guess I'll move ordinance 2017-16. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Mayor, I did want to say that in talking to them just quickly, if someone has a concern about the safety issues of their building, they can contact us with that information if they think that they can do this with any building. Right. But if they see lights on all the time and they're concerned about electric usage because they know the condition of the electricity system, they can contact code enforcement or building inspection, and then we would respond accordingly to review to make sure that it meets the standards for the use that occurs.
Okay.
So I know that was a question, and I wanted to say there is an avenue in this ordinance to deal with that.
Thank you.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is the annual performance report to the community on the 2016 CDBG and home programs and public hearing to obtain comments. And Kathy Fedler will lead this discussion.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and Council. Kathy Fedler, Housing Community Investment Manager for the city. And I'm here to provide the annual performance report to the community on the 2016 CDBG and home programs, and, as you mentioned, holding a public hearing about that, which is a requirement of those two programs. In your packet, you got information on how we did spend the 2016 CDBG funds, which were primarily for housing activities, support services at the suites, permanent supportive housing project, some downtown development improvements with the DDA, our ongoing housing rehabilitation program, a significant rehab and new unit creation at the suites itself, where 10 new units were created by splitting some 2-bedroom units into a studio and a 1-bedroom. And then also some assistance to Habitat and to the R Center for a Jobs to Home program. And then we did finish up the Midtown Neighborhood Revitalization Program with the Spangler Park improvements. That was the last item from the several years' worth of neighborhood revitalization improvements that we put into the Midtown neighborhood. We spent about, make sure I get my numbers right here, 1.4 million. No, that was the budget. We spent about just a little over $1 million this year out of a $1.4 million funds that were budgeted. We matched those funds with about $12 million, so a really high number of leverage this year, and served over 1,800 individuals or households or businesses. We did also spend 94% of the funds to serve low and moderate income persons, which 70% is the requirement under the HUD guidelines. We ended up the year of 2016 with a much smaller unexpended fund category than we have in the past. So we came into, and I'm looking at chart number 1, which is in your packet. We came into 2015 with about $800,000 in unexpended funds. We got a $600,000 grant, about $58,000 in program income. Like I said before, we budgeted that full amount, which was about $1.4 million. We spent $1 million, and so we ended up in the year with $409,000 that's carrying over into 2017. The funds are committed and the projects are underway. They just didn't all get spent in 2016. Chart 2 shows how funds were budgeted as a percent of the total budget for 2016. So 75% of the funds were budgeted in the housing category, 6% for neighborhood revitalization, community investment programs, 7%, economic development was 1%. So that's how they were budgeted. And then the expenditures is on chart 3. Which again shows $83,000 was spent in community investment programs. None was spent in economic development, and we've actually recaptured those grant funds and are going to reallocate them as part of the 2017 process because now our Colorado Enterprise Fund, who we contract with for the small business development program, their funds that they've loaned are revolving back at a higher rate than our little grant funds can keep up. So they never draw the grant funds and because they're spending the program income. So that's kind of spun off into its own successful program. $700,000 was spent on housing programs, $96,000 again to finish up that neighborhood revitalization project, and then $124,000 on program administration, which was about 18% of the grant, and we're allowed up to 20% on that. In the home program, all we got in this year was our administration funds. So we have allocated home funds for a project. It doesn't have its matching funds yet, so we continue to roll that into the next year. So this year, all we got was administration funds, which we use to do our ongoing monitoring of existing home programs to make sure they're continuing to meet their requirements. And then finally, in 2016, we spent about $740,000 from our local affordable housing fund, primarily on the suites rehab and new unit creation project, and then another $110,000 on the Spring Creek fee waiver offset. So that's where we have we actually pay from the affordable housing fund to offset water and sewer system development fees for affordable housing projects. The other thing I would like to touch on, since y'all were in Washington, or some of you were, and the current administration is calling for elimination of the CDBG program, was I wanted to just go back a little bit and tell you some of the information from historically, what we have spent CDBG funds on and how much that program has meant to the community. So this slide, and there's packets at your desk, through 2016, from the very first year we got funds in 1984, we have received $16 million in HUD CDBG funding and another almost $2 million in program income. So as we've made loans, that funds have come back to us. The next slide, thank you, shows our historical low and moderate income benefit. So we have spent a total of that 17.9 million from CDBG plus program income. We spent about 17.3 million to date. 13.9 of those funds were subject to the low and moderate income requirement. So that takes out administration and it takes out the primarily administration and any planning activities, et cetera. So of that 13.9 million that was subject to the low and moderate income criteria, 13.7 million has actually been spent on low and moderate income projects and in low and moderate income neighborhoods for a 98.1% low and moderate income expenditure rate since we first started receiving funds. This shows the home funding and the program income that we have received from the home funds. And the last year, 2016, I don't have on here, but it was 18,000, so you can add that up. So we have received about 2 million, I think, in, it looks like about that, in, or 1.5 to 2 million in home funding. I didn't add that on there, sorry. And then this slide shows our local affordable housing fund summary, and I included it even though it's not part of the federal funding. It does leverage those funds in a lot of ways, and they do kind of go hand in hand. And if CDBG goes away, there's even more need for local funding to step up and take its place if we're to meet some of our affordable housing goals. So we've received 11 million in affordable housing funds to date. We have loaned out 8 million of that. We've also paid out 780,000 in fees that were offset. And we granted 502,000. So all but about, it should add up to about 700,000, I think, is in the affordable housing fund right now. And then this last slide kind of summarizes what's on the back page of this sheet. So this graph or report here kind of points out some of the agencies that we've funded over the years with CDBG funds and what types of programs and projects have been funded. But the last page summarizes things. So through our local nonprofit agencies, we have provided about $7.8 million in total to nonprofits. Some of them are listed on this slide. I just pulled out some of the more prominent ones. 1.7 million has gone to the Housing Authority, 700,000 to Boulder County Housing Authority, the in-between 478,000. The in-between's kind of interesting because we invested in every single one of their units. So those units literally would not be here if there wasn't for the CDBG program. Habitat for Humanity, the same thing. Every single one of their units, we've had CDBG or our local affordable housing funds in those programs. So altogether, 1,036 units have been created or assisted, rehabbed, maintained, housing stock increased and improved using CDBG funds. 183 shelter beds have been created, both by funding the Boulder shelter as well as some of our local shelters. Another 4.2 million has been spent to keep our existing lower income homeowners in their homes, make energy efficiency improvements, correct code violations, the mobile home repair program. We've done a paint-a-thon in the past, accessibility improvements, et cetera, with that 4.2 million. And then $2.7 million has been spent on neighborhood revitalization over the years, direct investment in neighborhoods. And then finally, about $3 million on administration. So a total of, again, the $17.3 million has been spent to date. That averages about $4,400 per unit assisted, housing unit assisted. And using the last 5-year average of leveraging CDBG funds of 3.5 to 1, that's about a $60 million total investment. So these funds make a large impact in our community. So I will be quiet and take any questions, or if you want to open the public hearing, it's up to you.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Not so much any questions, but more of a statement. You did mention that several of us went to Washington, D.C., and we did meet with members of the Colorado delegation, and with information that staff provided, we did stress what the elimination of CDBG would do to the city of Longmont. Not only with the Colorado delegation, but I also met with other members, other senators, and other House members, and explained that as well. Not only that it devastates the city of Longmont, but devastate cities in their communities back in their respective states. So and we stressed how well we use and leverage those dollars. And speaking for myself, that was the mantra. But the other mantra was, presidents propose budgets, but it's Congress's job to pass a budget. So I feel that and mentioned this in several of the meetings that in board meetings that I was in, that those relationships we have with our members of Congress, whether House or Senate side, are and they know the story of Longmont for the Colorado delegation, or if they know the story of whatever community, that these cuts shouldn't, hopefully will not, one for elimination, but hopefully won't be too deep.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. One question. So, and this is serious. If you got hit by a bus tonight, who would do what you do?
Karen.
Okay. It's a yes. So other than the two,
she would leave, though, I think.
Yes. So my question is, seriously, do we have staff that know what they do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I could not spend $1 million while doing flood recovery without a really good staff. I really should have said that from the very beginning. Yes, my staff have been phenomenal.
That wasn't the point of the question. I've said this before. I think that what you guys do, you specific and Karen, phenomenal how you guys make the dollars stretch. And I mean, you're the moral compass, I think, of city staff. No offense, Harold. And I just look, I get reports like this, and I'm amazed and grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.
To answer your question, is a testament to the work she's been doing with her staff. As we've been getting more involved in flood recovery, we've actually moved her over to where she's doing the bulk of that work, so others are sliding in and filling gaps in other areas. So it's really the training that she's provided and coming in as we continue to add more to Kathy's plate.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on this annual performance report to the community. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Councilmember Christensen.
I just wanted to say, following up on what Councilman Santos said, we are advocating for continuing the funding for HUD and community development block grants because they are economic development as well, and this would devastate not just Longmont, but all of Colorado, particularly rural areas. So it's not just City Council, it's everybody who needs to write their representatives and express how important it is not to cut some of the things that are being called to be cut, although, as Councilman Santos said, a presidential budget is a wish list. It's not necessarily what winds up happening. But this is our opportunity to express ourselves to our representatives.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I actually move that we accept the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report and authorize staff to submit the CAPER to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development so the city can meet its reporting obligations under the Community Development Block Grant and home programs.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0. Thank you, Kathy.
Great, thank you. See you next year. Oh.
Mayor Coombs, your first item removed from the consent agenda is ordinance 2017-12, which approves the Town of Lyons contract to buy and sell the North and South Water Treatment Plant. Dale Rademacher will introduce this. It's 20, yes, ordinance 20.
Mayor Combs and members of council, I'm Dale Rademacher, General Manager of Public Works and Natural Resources. So tonight this is actually a great news kind of thing. I can say finally we are here with an agreement. For some of us, we've been working on this a really long time. I was looking back through the record. It was actually December of 2009 that we sent the first letter of support to the Town of Lyons to amend their planning area with Boulder County to allow our properties to ultimately be annexed into the city. So it's been going on a long time. So we're happy that we've gotten to this point. I don't know how to move it. What's it doing? And now we're stopped. So the properties that we're selling, they need a little fixing up, but just a joke. Yeah, a little fixer-upper here. We did actually treat water here. The South plant was one of the older plants in the state, 1934. The North plant, the one up in the top right-hand column, that was about 1967. So, the city had quite a few years of running these treatment plants. They were outdated. However, they were small. They were very inefficient to run, and the main thing is they couldn't meet the new water quality standards. And so as we moved to build the Nelson Flanders plant, we knew that we could abandon these plants and eventually dispose of them. So this is just a map of the Lyons planning area. You can sort of get a sense of how land constraint and constrained Lyons is. And so property that they can get annexed into their town is important to them. And I think for Longmont to be able to assist Lyons in that effort, I think is a good thing. So this just shows the properties. So the properties on the top are what we refer to as the North Treatment Plant. That's about 6 acres, 6.1 acres of ground. This area down here is what we refer to as the South Plant. That used to be about 3.66 before the flood. After the flood, we have more beach property than we do plant property, but the flood did impact on the south quite a bit more than on the north. So here's the flood. This sort of shows you what the flood did right there. This is the South Plant, and this is one of the first breaches that the St. Vrain took out of its channel. So one of the aspects of the contract, we are selling it for about $925,000, and that's a number, if you read the Times Call article, it was different than the numbers that we were looking at back in 2015. And since that time, the Town of Lyons has done additional appraisals of the property that came in significantly lower, and they had different assumptions in their appraisals than what the city did. And so what we did is sit down with them and come up with an agreed-to price that both sides could represent as being a fair sale. The Town of Lyons will be entering also into a promissory note and a deed of trust with the city. Essentially what that means is that we're going to carry the note for the 3 years that it takes for them to pay. So they are looking to buy the property out over 3 years with the first payment at closing, hopefully in April of this year, and then 2 more payments in February of 2018 and 2019. We are retaining the necessary easements for our electric utility, and then one of the other cool things that we're doing is sort of a 3-way agreement between the city and the county and Lyons to
cooperatively work to restore that part of the St. Vrain adjacent to the property, and we agreed that we would make the local match for that improvement. And so with that, I do want to introduce and offer to come down and say a few words. Mayor Connie Sullivan is here from the town of Lyons, and Victoria Simonson are here. And they both had late meetings last night. Understand they went till about midnight, but I'll look in.
Mayor Coombs and council, we just wanted to be here today on behalf of the town of Lyons to express our appreciation for your many years of cooperation and partnership with Lyons. I was first elected to the Board of Trustees in 2012, and this was one of the first things we discussed as a new board was how can we get this property to be contributing to the Lyons community and to our economy. And what the significance of this has really grown since the flood. This property is crucial to our recovery because this is going to be the new home to our new public works facility. What property we don't use for that will be hopefully opening up some opportunities for us to replace affordable housing as well. And also we'll see some economic development occur out there. So we are so appreciative of your patience and supporting us and knowing that this is a really crucial property for the town of Lyons. So thank you, and I hope that the motion passes.
I really don't need to take any more of your time tonight. I know it's getting late, but I as well would like to thank you for working with us over the years. For me, I've been working on this for over 7 years, so this is an exciting night to really see this. Hopefully will go to fruition and go to closing at the end of next month. So thank you again for working with us over the years, and if you have any questions between Dale and I, I'm sure we can answer them.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was just going to move passage of ordinance 2017-20.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Thanks for coming here tonight. I know I've been working on this since 2011. I had some of my first meetings with 2009. So yeah, it's been a long thing. So thanks, Dale. Thanks for everybody, and I love the town of Lyons. So we've got a motion. It's been seconded. Let's vote. What happened? Are you ready? Okay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. M and N.
Mayor Coombs, your next item that was pulled is item M, which is the water and sewer taps at 9800 North 119th Street. Staff doesn't have a presentation.
Staff does not have a presentation?
No, I believe we pulled this because Councilmember Bagley had to recuse himself.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, that's
So
right.
there are two resolutions on this, resolutions? Is that what it
Yes.
is? Yes.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move R 2017-25.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Yeah, it passes 6-0 with Councilmember Bagley recusing himself.
Mayor Coombs. Mayor Coombs.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move Resolution 2017-26.
All right, I'll second that. Let's vote. And that passes 6-0 with Councilmember Bagley recusing himself. Okay, now we're on to N.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is N, which is Resolution 2017-27, and it looks like Dale will make this short presentation.
Mayor Combs and members of council, it's Dale Rademacher again. Another long-term item that we've been working on. We're fortunate to report to you we've come to an intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County. David Bell is going to go through some of the terms and conditions of that particular IGA. But suffice it to say, the main genesis of it is that in lieu of the county buying the Tice property north of Highway 66, our agreement with them was that then they would offer for sale the Montgomery property to the city of Longmont. And tonight we're very fortunate to have with us Kathy Oliver and her husband Floyd. They have the family connections to this piece of ground, actually probably back decades and decades and decades through Kathy's family. And I believe Kathy would like to say just a few words to the council before David comes down.
Mayor Coombs and Council, on behalf of my sister Carolyn and myself, as well as our entire family, I would like to express gratitude that this family gift of land to Boulder County will be committed to the happy purpose of Longmont's Montgomery Park. Although the specifics of such things as ball fields, playgrounds, swimming pools, a possible rec center, or even a zip line are yet to be established, because they will be established, but it'll be by community input. We, of course, are immensely appreciative that this family gift will benefit so many of the people of Longmont and the surrounding areas. So thank you. The family name Montgomery could be a mystery to several of you. My mother's parents were Elmer and Alice Montgomery. Alice McNitt Montgomery was the only child of Alpheus and Orpha McNitt. Alice was born in Colorado Territory in 1874, 2 years before statehood. Her parents homesteaded at Gowanda, which is west of Platteville, and that homestead date was 1870. Alpheus was a civil and hydraulic engineer, and he was the first Weld County surveyor. Beginning with Orpha, we are 4 generations of Weld County teachers. Elmer Montgomery, here we come with the name. Elmer Montgomery moved here from Rock Island, Illinois in 1900. He was 36 at the time, and he had enjoyed being a farmer in Illinois. However, he suffered from asthma and hay fever and hoped that Colorado could offer him better health. He bought a farm east of Longmont. That farm just happened to be adjacent to the farm where Alice lived while teaching at Pleasant Hill School. I still have the wedding dress from that 1902 wedding. In 1906, Elmer Montgomery purchased a second farm. It was located 5 miles east of Longmont and 1 mile north of the confluence of the St. Vrain River and Boulder Creek. It commands a magnificent view of the Rocky Mountains. That farm I am now describing is Montgomery Park. Because the first 2 sons died in infancy, Elmer and Alice Montgomery moved to Longmont to 407 Bowen, where my mother, Emma Alice Montgomery, was born. My mother, Emma Alice Montgomery, married Richard Ham, and of course that connects you to Jim Ham Pond. And also, my parents were very committed to service to the community of Longmont. Elmer Montgomery continued in farm management and also served in several capacities in the community of Longmont. In 1914, he was elected to the Colorado legislature, and Elmer and Alice Montgomery were people who gave back to the Longmont community and to Boulder community, the county. And so I need to tell you that this use of the farm for Montgomery Park feels just right to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to have David come up and talk, but before he does, I just want to share our own family connection with the Montgomery farm. My grandfather bought one of the Montgomery farms, so Mr. Montgomery was very successful in land, and I'm still living on one of the old Montgomery farms. We happen to call it a different name now, but it's the same thing. So, David, if you can come up and talk about the proposal.
Yep. Sure. Thank you very much, Mayor, council members. You've seen this for a while. As everyone's mentioned, it's been ongoing for a little bit. I started this project actually back when I was with the county on the agricultural side, and I just know it's a kind of win for the county, keeping agriculture north of 66. It's great for the community to have the community park down closer to the development now. Hearing Kathy Oliver, hearing what a great event this is for her and her family. It just feels like a win-win-win tonight on this one. So I'll just give you a little bit of background, hit some of the highlights of the IGA, and give you some opportunity to ask some questions. So again, the overview is the fact that the Tice family approached Boulder County to ask if they could have a conservation easement placed over the Tice property. That property falls in the planning area of Longmont, so it required Longmont to approve of this. So back in February, the council did go ahead and give a conditional consent to go ahead and figure out the terms of this. One of those conditions was the development of an IGA. So that IGA required that the city would allow this to happen if the county sold Montgomery Farms to the city. So the Tice property is about, I believe, 73, 78 acres, if I have to go back and look at that, but Montgomery Farms is 129 acres. So Boulder County wanted to keep some of that agricultural land available and also give Longmont the opportunity for their community park. So there'll be 129 acres, 80 acres will be for the community park, 49 acres will be for natural areas or for agriculture, and we did purchase a 50% interest in the water. That comes up to that $2,800,000. The price does escalate every year after 5 years, so it's our intention, looking at the budget, we would like to do this within 5 years so we avoid any sort of escalation over the term of this agreement. And again, with the history of this property and knowing its special nature to the community and to the family, we want to make sure that the property stayed Montgomery Farms, and part of the terms of Boulder County and the city were that it would be named Montgomery Farm in the future. So you'll see that in a kind of unique place. It's in the special warranty deed, and that meets the requirements of our naming convention. So by having it in there, it will stay Montgomery Farm. I think you saw the other map first, which shows Tice up north of 66. This is then Montgomery Farm with County Line Road on the east side there and 66 on the north. The dark area at the bottom is the Jim Ham Park. So again, it has that continuity with historic family properties down there at Jim Ham Park. Moving north, you'll have that 49 acres that will remain in agriculture or some sort of natural area. So it transitions up then more into the community park. You'll see a little bit of a wavy line along the west side of the property, knowing that we're going to have neighborhoods and communities there. Wanted to make sure that we recognized and kind of gave some buffering between the neighborhood and the park. So we will have a buffer built in between the community park and the neighborhood. We had the city had a community meeting out in that area back in February, and again, I think we received very good feedback from the community, the family, the county, and the city on the future endeavors of this property. Until the city goes ahead and makes this into a community park, it will remain in agriculture. Right now, Dave Asbury is the largest organic farmer in the area, and he is farming that land, and he would continue to farm this land. Any questions?
Councilmember Bagley?
I move that we pass Resolution 2017-27.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. I would like to just express my thanks for everybody that worked hard to get this deal done. I think it's going to be good for the future of our community, and I'd like to thank the Montgomery family people for making this deal possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Mayor Coombs, the last item pulled from consent was Resolution 2017-32, and that is the special council contract. Eugene May has a short presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Eugene May, City Attorney. I'm here to present a special council contract
for council's consideration regarding development and redevelopment legal services. The real vision for the services here contained within the scope of work for this contract comes out of both short-term and long-term needs. In the short term, council heard at the end of last year about the Rivertown proposal. This would be a new urban renewal area starting in Sunset and moving west over by the Boston area. And with new urban renewal legislation, the city felt that it would be prudent to bring in expertise in this area to help us with that development. On a longer term, looking at some of the goals of Envision Longmont, we see infill and redevelopment opportunities in the city presenting some challenges. And this special counsel contract would not only increase our expertise in handling those sort of complex infill redevelopment opportunities, but also increase our capacity as the workload in the city attorney's office increases and we try to make strategic use of special counsel services. Some of the potential opportunities in the future include the sugar mill, the First and Main TOD redevelopment, and other development opportunities within the city. So we did issue an RFP, and Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck was the unanimous choice of the evaluation committee. I think the two things that really stood out in my mind was Brownstein's representation of both municipalities in this context, urban renewal authorities, as well as the private sector. So they bring a dual perspective in representing the city's interests, understanding what developers are looking for in these difficult development projects, as well as representing the interests of the city. The other thing was Brownstein is renowned for its broad practice in a lot of different specialty areas. We don't know what the future holds, but there could be certainly operating and implementing under the new urban renewal legislation, different funding mechanisms, including tax increment financing, other land use areas where Brownstein had particular expertise. The proposed primary and lead attorney for this project is Carolyn White. I've known Carolyn for over 10 years, and she is a very well-respected colleague, I consider now. In my past experience, she has been on the other side of the table advocating the interests of her client. I would much rather have her on my side of the table, and I think that's one of the best compliments an attorney can give another attorney. Ms. White has been active in recent urban renewal legislation, both at the General Assembly and coordinating with the Colorado Municipal League, and implementing that legislation for urban renewal authorities throughout the state. Ms. White is a frequent speaker on land use development issues and has authored numerous articles on those topics. I've attended many of her seminars and always leave there feeling wiser. So with that, I will introduce Ms. White.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, City staff, members of the public. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I haven't really prepared a presentation or formal remarks. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to provide legal counsel to the City of Longmont as you consider your infill and urban redevelopment opportunities. This is my core area of practice, and it's something I'm really excited and passionate about. And I have worked in and around the City of Longmont for many years. In fact, when I left the public sector to enter private practice, my very first public hearing was right here in these council chambers. So I have very fond memories of that 15 years ago. We did submit for the RFP, and I would be pleased to represent your interest in helping you negotiate with developers and otherwise implement your long-range plans. The one thing that I might mention and expand on that your city attorney mentioned, and that is compliance with new legislation. As you know, the law in this area is constantly changing. We have new legislation almost every year, and it is something that I spend a lot of time trying to keep up with and to provide training and counseling to my clients about. So we've assisted a number of cities already in coming into compliance with new urban renewal legislation, and should you decide to move forward with a new urban renewal plan, we'd be pleased to assist you in that regard as well. I'd also be glad to answer any questions if the council would like me to speak about anything in particular.
Well, I think you come very highly recommended, and if Eugene says you're great, then does your head feel like it's like
It really does, yes.
Anyway, I think you're going to be a great addition to our legal team, so thank you for being here. And I know it's been a long night, but Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you. We've had really great, the bar is like way up here. We've had phenomenal both in-house and outside counsel. I move passage of Resolution 2017-32.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Coombs, your first item on general business is St. Vrain Valley School District Quail Road Annexation Referral. Ava Pahachevsky will make this presentation.
You want a cookie?
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, council members. Ava Pahachevsky, Planning and Development Services. The St. Vrain Valley School District is requesting tonight that you refer for substantive review an application to annex 90 acres of property that's south of Quail Road, east of the rec center in the Quail Ridge neighborhood. I know you got a vicinity map in your packet there. The school district owns 20 acres of it, and the city owns the remaining 70 acres. The city's portion is planned on the Envision Longmont plan for a future community park. Don't know when that will be built out, but it's in the comp plan. The school district's properties are on the western and on the eastern edges, as you've seen on the vicinity map. And so on the western edge, that's planned to be a school district innovation center, which they hope to start construction soon in the coming months. And then on the eastern side, the little square parcel on the east is a planned elementary school, future elementary school. And so the concept plan for the annexation was given to you in your packets. Right now, I think they've just got the site plan together for the Innovation Center. They're proposing zoning public for the school district properties and ag for the city property, and that is because the city currently has farming tenants there, and the ag zoning would allow that use to continue, the farming use on the property until the city constructs the park, and a park use is also allowed in ag zone, so it works out for both ways. And so with that, we have Brian Lamer here and Ryan Craigrid from St. Vrain Valley School District. We don't have a formal presentation, but either Brian, Ryan, or I would be happy to answer any questions for you. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move that we direct staff to begin the process for the Quail Road annexation referral.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Thank you.
Oh, we should make Ryan speak. Maybe we should have Ryan speak.
Oops. Oops, I hit the wrong button. There we go. That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your final item tonight is to discuss and direct staff regarding potential options for on-street recreational vehicle parking, and Sean Lewis will present this.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, I know I'm the last thing standing between you and going home, so I can be as detailed or as brief as you'd like. You have been given this information. I can quickly go over that, or I can just open it up for questions and comments based on the information that's in your background.
Do you want to just give us a quick overview?
Sure. So the problem that you all and staff identified with regard to RVs is the fact that, RVs are large objects that are on our streets and roadways. They can sometimes be hard to move around, make getting out in and out of driveways a little more difficult. And in addition, and probably what you've heard more, is the fact that some RVs are occupied, and you see some of the issues that can be created by the occupation of these on city streets. But the real issue here being livability and quality of life in our residential areas. as well as economic vitality in our commercial areas. So some of the goals that staff wanted to achieve was increasing safety on our streets and also providing relief to residents and businesses that can be negatively affected by the occupied campers, and then also to reduce negative environmental impacts. So we came up with 3 groups of options. Each of these options have some sub-options that you can see. The first option would be a new ordinance that would prohibit one of the following items. First of all RV parking on streets. And I'm not going to go into all of the pros and cons in this. I'll just give you the options. The second would be to prohibit all RV parking on streets, but just in specific zoning areas. And C, to prohibit trailers, and that could be of any kind, prohibit those from parking if those trailers are detached from a vehicle. I should mention that this is the most common complaint that we've received with regard to occupied RVs, are RVs that are detached from a vehicle, and a vehicle may come at some time and move it just the minimum amount to get past the ordinance, but we don't see often, that is, the large drivable RVs that are parked on streets, although that does happen. Option 2 would be a new ordinance that would allow RV parking on the streets, but only by permit. This is staff's least favorite option for a variety of reasons, but you can see some of the ways that might be set up. And then option 3 would be to revise the current ordinance to remove the word attended from the description of abandoned vehicle. That would allow city staff to be able to tow an abandoned or junk vehicle even if a person had been in it within the last 24 hours. Of course, there is a law that says if a vehicle is occupied, it cannot be towed. So we certainly would respect that state regulation, but it would actually free law enforcement's hands to tow a vehicle even if we have evidence that was occupied the previous day or an hour ago, et cetera. The second one under revise the current ordinance would be to make offenses eligible for a traffic violation. Right now, our only recourse is to require them to move that, and if they don't, then the city has the right in code currently to tow that, again, if it meets the definition of a junked or abandoned vehicle. And then the third would be to add language to the abandoned vehicle ordinance that would really define how far the camper would have to be moved. I think this would be the option that you heard in public invited to be heard about a move along clause, where we would require some distance that an RV would have to be relocated from its present, instead of just an inch or moving it off those chalk marks as we currently enforce, you would have to move it a block away, et cetera. Or maybe you could say that an RV couldn't return to the same location for 2 weeks, 30 days, something to that effect. So I just want to end by just discussing some of the challenges that staff had as we looked at all of these policies. There is a recommendation in the staff report, but certainly we work at your direction and are glad to research and or bring back an ordinance on any of the options or combination of options that you like. But some of the things that we faced was the fact that, there are rights of homeowners and businesses to have full enjoyment of their property. And that can include sometimes the effects of people that are parked on private property and on public property with an RV that's occupied. But we also want to respect the fact that RV owners, use those RVs to go camping. Obviously with our location, I think we have more RVs than anywhere I've ever lived. And so we want them to be able to load and unload those RVs and have ample time to do that. Also for people to be able to have, family members that come and stay for a short period of time that might have to park on the street if there is not a place on their private property to park those temporarily. And then we also, I would also add to that the right of folks to have a place to live. So we know that RVs parked on private property, we know that we have people that are living in those permanently. Staff is not inclined at this point to prohibit that in some way. But again, we're balancing these rights. And then rights of city contractors, as has been mentioned, because of the way the ordinance is written, we have the right to tow those vehicles. We do have some danger in losing contracts in the future to get towing companies to continue to provide us services to remove these from the streets, because many times when they come into possession of these, the owner never comes back to retrieve them, and they have to dispose of those campers, and that can be very costly. So we want to be respectful of the fact that we have to make sure that our contractors continue to do what we need them to do, and then we're not placing an undue burden by something very broad and wide-sweeping in terms of an ordinance that affects them as well. And then lastly, the rights of taxpayers. We want to be mindful of the fact that certain parts of the ordinance that we have shown you could have a budgetary impact for the city and could certainly impact staff resources as well. So I'll be glad to answer any questions about these rights and how we try to balance those with any of the options and or just take direction from council on how you want to go.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. What's an RV? You've used several different terminologies. You've used camper, RV, and trailer. What are we talking about?
It's actually all of the above. So the way we've used this in discussing this item is that an RV is a vehicle that's been designed to live in, short term typically, but we know that there are RVs that people live in long term. So that can be a trailer that you pull behind. That can be a fifth wheel. That can be a drivable, what we probably all call an RV, which would be something that you can drive as well.
Right, and this is the whole terminology is going to hurt us. It's already hurting us with other aspects of city policy and other items. But we have to be very clear on the terminology about what we're talking about. Using RV intermittently with trailer and camper. I think of an RV as we've had this discussion, Sean, as a vehicle that moves on, that can move by itself. A trailer can't. It's got to be attached. A camper can't. It's got to be attached. So we have to be very careful with the terminology. That's my biggest thing. In fact, I looked at the code, the classifications with the state of Colorado, and I sent this to staff. Here are the terminology. An RV is classified as one thing under the tax code for licensing. Campers, trailers are classified as another thing under a different classification. So, again, terminology could come back and bite us in the butt.
Mayor Coombs, members, Councilmember Santos, I would just, Joni Marsh, Planning Director, did just provide that exact definition. It's everything that I mentioned, but it does exclude camper shells that do not stick up more than a foot above the pickup bed. So it does include the trailers, the drivables, the pull-behinds, et cetera.
So one of my questions is, sometimes people, like in our neighborhood, we've got people that will come from out of state and they'll drive an RV and they'll park the RV, in front of the people that they're visiting, and it doesn't bother anybody. They're just fine with it, and they're still, just staying for a couple of days. But, I don't want that to be a big deal where all of a sudden someone calls and they have to move their RV to another block when it's not an issue. So, I realize the big problem you have is balancing those types of things that, you don't want people that are legitimately using their RV and visiting people to be, so that's one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about. But, I also am sensitive to these people that are just going to move their car, that really are a nuisance, and they're just obviously camping there and, moving it an inch. So, yeah, I realize what a hard problem this is to find that balance. So, anyway, that's some of my concerns. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I'll just say right off the top, I don't really like any of these options. I think I'd like to see a little more time spent on it, not only to address some of the, fill in some of the nuances that have been identified already by your own presentation, as well as Councilmember Santos's definitions. I think we'd like to have a clearer picture of where we're going with this. At least I would. I won't speak for other council members. And also, just during your presentation, I picked up on trailers of any kind not attached to a vehicle. What about a landscape contractor needing to leave his trailer there overnight so that he comes back in the morning and can continue to do the work? So I think there's still some confusion around this. need some clarification on certain points. So I'm really would rather send this back for some more work before I support anything.
Councilmember Christensen.
I think you've done a great job of setting forth all the pros and cons. And that may be the problem because I see a lot of cons on everything. I have the same concern with contractor trailers, which and personal flatbed. It depends on how big they are. But, you know, there are so many small contractors and small business people who do landscaping work, moving work, all kinds of things. I would certainly never want them to not be able to park on the street or park in the driveway. Right now, I was told by one of the towing services with whom I am becoming very familiar thanks to my son, that if you park on the street for more than 24 hours, you can be towed. Is that true?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Christensen, as well as Councilmember Moore, I think both of you have raised a good question.
Yes.
Staff is proposing something that is slightly beyond what the immediate problem that you all identified with RVs, and that is the fact that trailers that are not attached to vehicles are an issue citywide. We are one of the few cities actually in the Front Range that doesn't have a detached trailer policy, because many times those do create issues with vehicular traffic, et cetera. And so, but the current code, we're not proposing any changes to the current code that would allow you to keep that trailer on the street for up to 72 hours, as needed. We also have a provision in current code that if you need longer than that, you can notify the police department, and you can even leave a note on the vehicle. So we actually have a lot of outs in current code that would allow, for instance, a contractor or someone else who had a pull-behind trailer that needed to be left on the street for longer, to where you can do that. It would just give the city staff the ability to remove that if it was simply left there, for days on end, for longer than 72 hours.
But if people park in the same place every day and it's in front of their house and they take it away and then they bring it back and they take it away and they bring it back, who's to say that they haven't moved it? They have moved it.
Well,
Do you
that's
see what I mean?
Right. It's part of the right. It's one of the challenges.
But if they park it in a driveway, is that considered? I mean, if they park either an RV or any kind of form of trailer in their driveway, we would certainly not be removing it, would we?
Right.
Because I know people who've been towed with stickers that are out of date, and they've been parked in their own driveway, and the city has come and towed them. And people are pretty irate about that.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Christensen, so the code was changed, I think about 2 years ago, to actually allow people to be able to park in their front yard, in their setback in a defined parking area.
Okay.
And so we actually loosened the regulations with regard to RV parking on private property a couple of years ago and made that easier.
Okay.
So certainly we would not be towing any vehicle on private property. There are, of course, junk vehicle issues on private property, but that goes through the normal code process. But I do want to correct something that I said about the moving for 72 hours. We are saying that it would be prohibited to park the trailer on the street without a vehicle attached to it. So that would be potentially something that we could require a property owner to remove that from the property. Typically, that would be on a complaint basis, like most of our code enforcement efforts are.
Okay. I do think, though, that as Councilman Bagley said, it is about the marijuana issue. It's and as you've said, it's an issue of balancing the rights of everybody here. what we have is a small number of people who are abusing public space. And one of the ladies I was talking to earlier who talked said that, I said, why didn't that guy go down to the campground? We have a campground. She said he was thrown out of there for arguing. And that was their objection. Wherever this guy goes, he's going to be causing a problem because he's not a nice guy. You know, we do have a campground, and that's where RVs should be going, except if they are, as Mayor Coombs said, guests of somebody. Perhaps if they have a written statement that they are a guest of somebody in the neighborhood, that would help. And if they don't have that statement, then they need to go to the campground or move along.
So one quick question. Which one of these three options does staff prefer? I mean, to me, it kind of seems like number 3. If you had to pick yours, what's staff's recommendation?
Well, I should mention, Mayor Coombs, members of council, I should mention that there was a lot of debate, and staff is not making a very hard and fast recommendation on this. Our preference of the team that looked at this, the task force, was 1C, which would prohibit parking of any detached vehicle on the streets, and combine that with, is it 3?
3A.
3A, right, to remove the word unattended, because that's the other thing that we come up against a lot, is the fact that these, we can verify and folks can prove that they have occupied that trailer in the last 24 hours, therefore we can't, it kind of resets the clock as long as they just move it off the chalk marks. So if we remove that, then we feel like we could actually get these out of the neighborhoods quicker.
Well, I myself think that you should move ahead with that, and when you write the ordinance, make clear definitions of an RV and bring it back to us for, that's what I think we should do at this point. I think doing nothing is just dragging our feet. So I think you guys have spent a lot of time on this. And Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. As far as the problem of defining RVs, would it be possible in this ordinance to put a legend and come up with a generic term for automobiles or vehicles with 4 wheels that you're living in, for example, VW buses that have been refitted for campers and homes, school buses that people buy and decide to live in? Can we come up with a generic term for vehicles and then do a legend when I say I mean, and just list all of the possibilities we could come up with? Just a suggestion.
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Peck, that's a great idea. I would mention that one of the categories that's in our current definition of RVs is buses that are lived in. And so I think that we would probably count like a Volkswagen, again, that was designed for habitation, short or long term, would be in that same category of RV according to the RV definition that's currently in code. But as Councilmember Santos said, we certainly can provide you guys in a legend or graphics, as if that's what you're asking for, to maybe provide a little bit more clarity on what that is.
Well, I was just thinking of the clarity for the public, not necessarily for us, but I mean, it'd be very easy to have many arguments about this isn't an RV. I just would like to avoid that.
And that's the part of working with the legal staff, because in a lot of ordinances you will say a recreational vehicle, which includes, and that's where you start listing all of these pieces to it, and you talk about being inhabited. And that's really the work that we do in conjunction with the legal staff, is crafting that definition in terms of what does RV mean here in Longmont as it's defined by the ordinance. So there may be a lot of different, you look at different statutes and it may have a lot of different meanings, but we're going to focus on what it means here in Longmont. And that's where we're going to look to our partners in the city attorney's office to really craft that.
Okay, and I do agree with Mayor Coombs that we should remove attended from abandoned vehicles. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I agree that we need a definition. I also think that if, and maybe we already have this and I'm just unaware of it, if we had a provision that allowed RVs in front of homes with the permission of the homeowner for a specified amount of time, that would preclude any problems with people, with visitors to their home that need to stay in their RV for, a couple days. Or how, we could discuss what that time limit should be, but that would be my idea. I also, I know you guys don't like the move more than one block from current position, but I like that.
Actually, staff didn't dislike that. That just wasn't our final recommendation.
I understand. And the prohibit all trailer any kind parking when detached from a vehicle, could we make that part not just a trailer or RV, but any, you know what I'm talking about, Harold, the guy who leaves his car trailer out in on the public street that irritates neighbors?
If I may jump in, one of the complaints that is similar to the issue that we're talking about, but not where someone's living in, is a complaint about someone with a, I guess for lack of a better word, a racing trailer that stays parked on the street. So it's not a work trailer; it's like an enclosed trailer that just sits there, and so a different issue. But when the neighbors call to complain about it, it still starts falling into the same world that we're dealing with.
It's the same kind of
it's
category.
It's the same concept.
Yeah.
It's just a different issue that is causing issues.
So I would like to see us address that as well. And I think removing attended from abandoned vehicle ordinance, that's a quick, easy thing we can do, but I think we need to do more than that. I think we need to go a little bit further than that and have them move more than a block.
Move more than a block or more than a foot?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, okay. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I think that the balance can be struck. I mean, like, I remember when I was a kid and my dad would bring home the towing towing camper that you'd wind up and it'd pop up, and we'd all go sleep out there the night before he woke up at the crack of dawn and, pulled us all to, I don't even know where we went, but it was fun. So I wouldn't have a problem with option 1B saying that we prohibit all RV parking on streets in certain zoning classifications, specifically residential zones, but give them 72 hours, and then after that, you also prohibit, that's any kind of RV, pull, detached, whatever. And then you combine that with, and then after 72 hours, you have to move it more than one block from its current position. That would allow people visiting you to come for a weekend. And if they really, 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 really had to stay for an additional couple of days, they'd have to move it somewhere else. I think that's perfectly okay. And then I also think, I think that I personally would go for option 1B and C. And I think that 3C little I is a good idea. And I also think that 3C2 is a good idea after the 72 hours, initial 72 hours. And I also think for sure a slam dunk's 3A, remove attended from abandoned vehicle ordinance. Because I don't think that we should start allowing or encouraging people with RVs, trailers, etc., to park in the street at all. But understanding that there are exceptions, and if somebody needs to park for a weekend or whatever, then you're good. And then make an exclusion, even under option 2, saying that if you need to obtain a permit, you're a worker, you need to stay there longer for, professional reasons or whatever, come up with some mechanism that would allow them to work on a construction site, because we obviously have home building and renovations going on, and they have trailers. And so, we need to make an exception for that. But I don't think anything longer than 72 hours is imposing on anybody's constitutional right to redneck it up. On the contrary, I think that, their neighbors would appreciate us saying, 3 days of doing what you do is plenty. So, and after that, go bug the other side of the block. And if you like being a redneck that much, then more power to you. Move the trailer and do your thing. Those are my thoughts.
Councilmember Christensen.
I would support things, but not prohibiting. This is really has to do with people living in their trailers. And to make it simple, I think we should confine it to people living in their trailers and not mix it up with people who are trying to run a small business and have just a contractor trailer. I would never vote for that because it creates chaos all over. I know in my neighborhood we have lots and lots of these, and they're perfectly nice people, and they work hard. I do think it's a good idea to 1B with zoning classifications to, well, I basically agree with what Councilman Bagley said, except I would not vote for 1C.
Mayor Coombs, if you'd like, I can try to summarize what the direction, albeit a little bit varied. So according to my tallies, the most commonly liked item is removing the unattended. So I think we can definitely, we've got consensus to do that. The second most common thing that folks liked was moving it more than a block. Is that correct? That most of you actually liked that one. I actually had I think I got a majority, or at least 3, that said they don't like all trailers, the prohibition on all trailers. Is that correct or incorrect? Councilmember Finley, I wasn't exactly clear on. Well, so what one of the staff recommendations was to prohibit all trailers from parking on the street unless it's attached to a vehicle. And I didn't quite get if you were supported that or disliked that. That would include contractor trailers, anyone with a trailer detached.
Yeah, there are problems with that.
Okay, so I think I've got 3 that did not care for that, and then.
Who are those 3?
Well, but I'd like if
Go ahead, Councilmember Finley.
I like that if we can have a permit process for those who need a permit process, like a contractor.
Okay. And actually, I got that from, I believe that was somewhat similar to Councilmember Bagley.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Bagley, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all me.
So I'm going to divert a little bit from the list that we presented because I also heard some other things. And so I'm going to ask slightly different questions. One, what I heard is in defining it from the RV is really anything that can be lived in. That was the big, I think we heard from every one of you, if you can live in it. That was the issue. The other thing I wanted to, while Sean's going through his list to look at is when we were talking about the 72 hours, so you have a defined time period. That you can have your RV parked so you can get it ready for a trip, or you can get it ready from when you've been, back from a trip, those types of things. I tended to see council nod their heads on that. So my question would be is, on that defined period of time, what is your take on that?
I think that's a good idea because you might come home late on a Sunday night. You have to go to work the next day. You can't unpack and clean the thing up. So, I think, 48 hours, 72 hours.
What I heard from council was that anything above 72 hours, if you needed it to have it there longer, or if it's a contractor trailer or something like that, that the permit could address that.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Councilmember Joan or Peck?
Councilmember. Thank you, Mayor Dennis. I have a little problem with the permit because that suggests that you have to purchase a permit. Can we just say an extension? Because I can't see why, if someone is on a contracted job at a residence, which is happening across, on our street, they they have parked their small trailer in the street and it's been there for a week, but they're working on this house. So why can't they just apply for an extension of the time rather than a permit? Does that, I don't know why they should have to pay to park on a public street unless it's, we have meters or,
So whether
it
it's
just doesn't make sense. It's,
whether it's a permit or whether it's an extension,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is, at least from your perspective, you don't want us to charge for it.
I don't think they should be charged.
Okay. Is that council's, I mean, is,
Pay attention back.
okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did we get consent?
Member Bagley?
No fees, but.
Thank you, Mayor Combs.
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out.
I was also going to say that when I'm talking about construction or trailers, I'm talking about on the job site. It wouldn't be, oh, the city allows me to park my work truck in front of my house every night. You know, I mean.
It's a different part of the code.
Right. So we're talking about work on job site locations, just to be clear. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, we got more than 4 head bobs. We're good. That's official.
Which is to be specific to it's allowed if there's an active job site. So if I just am a contractor and I park it in front of my house for weeks on end, that's not allowed.
You don't even need a permit.
Right.
If it's an active job site, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, that could be certainly an exception written into the code. You could prohibit all trailer parking detached unless it's part of an active job site.
Yeah.
Getting all
Okay.
2 no's,
Yeah.
4 yeses.
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
A lot of stuff. Nobody's yelling, screaming.
So would that also include like landscapers you can consider if they're, how would you know, let's say they're landscaping in the back, I mean, are you going to know that it's an active job site or?
The neighbors are going to call.
Okay. Yeah, they'll know, okay.
They're going to rat you out.
Okay.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. Well, make another run at this. I think the contractor's trailer is a legitimate use of the public space for a short period of time. Generally, they're going to be there for a couple weeks at the most, and hopefully they're not going to leave the trailer there for a couple weeks, because my experience in our neighborhood is like landscape contractor come in and 2 days later they're gone. So if that's, if it's not a permanent fixture like a racing car trailer or some auxiliary motorcycle trailer or something like that that's never off the street, I think we're creating 2 different uses of that public space. Having them haul that off every night also creates, I think it's better if they could just leave it there for limited periods of time while the job's active. Is pretty easy to describe, I think. And having them not have to move it every day probably makes it more efficient for them overall, as well as traffic and all those other things that go along with that. So I'd like, if we're going to prohibit trailers, I think we do need to make an exception for contractors.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that back here for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. Councilmember Christensen.
Okay, I live in Old Town where many people never had garages or any space, any private space to park. So they only have their street. There's a guy across the street from me who's a handyman and runs his own business. You're saying that he has no right to park his truck on the street?
No.
Or his trailer? I mean, I don't care. It doesn't cause any problems to me or anybody in the neighborhood. And this is what we're doing to small businessmen, is we're saying, no, we want you to get another permit. They already got a permit to run their business. Now we're saying they need a permit to have their own trucks on the street. I mean, I think this is very discriminatory against small businesses.
Okay.
Mayor Coombs, if
It
I could
has
clarify.
and it has nothing to do with people living in their cars. This rule, the original problem had to do with people living in their cars and their RVs and their vans and whatnot. I think we should confine it to that.
Mayor Coombs, I would just want to clarify that I don't think that council was saying that they can't park their trucks on the street or even a truck with a trailer on it, but simply if the truck is detached from the vehicle, that's allowed at construction sites, but it needs to be attached to a vehicle if it's the home, the home of the business. And in an old town, I think there might be opportunities. Most of those streets have alleys for backyard parking where that could also be allowed. But I understand your concern, certainly, that if that is the business owner's home, that you feel like they should have the right to park their trailer detached from a vehicle on the street. We're just saying that the trailer wouldn't be allowed, but connected to their truck or car, that would be allowed.
Councilmember Peck, could you let Gabe go, because Councilmember Santos go first, because he hasn't spoken yet, and then you could. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Councilmember Peck. No, listening to this conversation, it's devolving, especially attention spans. No one is saying that if you are a small business contractor that you can't park in front of your house, because usually you're going to leave to go to work. And I get I understand how this all came about with the person living in a trailer, and those residents like us to focus on that. But if I'm not an attorney, but we can't just focus on that particular item. It's got to be an overall encompassing regarding RVs, trailers, and what have you, campers, and we just can't say you just can't live in your car. You can try, but there's all types of issues with freedoms and what have you. It might be that should this come back, and it will, that perhaps a little bit more. Hold on. You guys talked for a while. I waited. Perhaps a little bit more detail about whatever was, Councilmember Bagley picked about what council can do as far as the guy living in his car. I understand I can get this. I understand it. But it's obvious that we're not firing on all cylinders here as far as everyone understanding what we're trying to do. So I heard that from members of council that let's address the one issue about the guy living in the trailer. It's evolved into we have to now talk about recreational vehicles and unabandoned and abandoned and what types of vehicles to somebody being able to park in their car. I mean, this conversation is going all over the place. I'm trying to focus it in, so perhaps just a little bit more information about how we got to where we're at when we get to first reading might be beneficial for not only for members of council, but for the public as well. Because we have people that think that we can just do something like that. That's not necessarily how it works. We did that with the home grows. It took some time. If you rush ordinances, that's just bad policy. So, a little bit more information for better education is probably the best thing. Just a thought.
And I think what we were trying to do is, obviously you've seen the world that it's be this big. Mm-hmm. What we're trying to understand is tolerances and what folks are interested in, so we can craft something that has more meat to the bones to give you all to look at, because the reality is we could have come in with something that completely missed it, and we've gone through that work of drafting the ordinance, and I think I looked at Sean, I think we've got what we need where we can put the details together for you all to bring you something back that's more specific. What we were trying to do is narrow the world.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you. Sean, do you have what you need?
Mayor Coombs, Councilmember Peck, we absolutely do, and if we're incorrect on that, we can discuss that at the next reading.
And I do want to remind the public, actually, that this city does not go around looking for cars that they don't think should be parked on the road. It would be by complaint only, like everything else. So thank you very much for your work. I cannot wait to see what you come back with.
Okay, now it's time for final call, public invited to be heard. Is anybody from the public would like to come and speak at this time?
Oh, no. I move that we adjourn. I request 10 minutes, please.
Sean lied to you. He wasn't the last one between you and going home. Alex Samori, 428 Pratt Street. 4 things I want to make sure that everybody is aware of. This tree that has been chosen as a replacement is going to get destroyed if it doesn't have a home. Okay? This is part of the widening of the river path. So it's a 25-foot tree. It's a male cottonwood. It'll grow fast and provide shade and shelter for the neighbors. It was unanimously requested by all neighbors. 7 out of 8 homes signed the petition to have the tree removed because we've been dealing with it, some of us for over 35 years. The neighbors had been offered in the past to have the trees removed and replaced without costing them anything, both from the neighbors and from the city. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the welfare and the quiet enjoyment of the rest of the neighbors is equally important, if not more important, than the tree. It is not about the neighbors. We all care and love the neighbors. That's why we took a long time to work with the forestry department to make sure that there was a replacement that wasn't just a sapling, a 2-inch wide maple tree or something like that. And so that's all I'll say. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. And I needed to get my glasses.
That was beautiful. I'm going to cry.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak?
Council, Scott Stewart, Mayor Combs, council members. Hi again. Scott Stewart, 229 Grant Street. Wow, a lot of talk about plants tonight, all different kinds. Hey, my mom lives about 6 houses away from this this cottonwood tree that's getting so much attention. Yeah, there's a lot of cotton in the area, and sometimes for some time in the summer. There's also a lot of leaves for some time in the fall. I mean, it's a tree. Oak trees around the area, they produce these acorn things, and if you're walking down the sidewalk, you can turn your ankle on them. They're a hazard. Maybe we should remove the oak trees, too. I may be wrong about this. 2 types of cottonwoods. One produces cotton, the seed. The other produces pollen. If we're talking about the opposite tree, we might have a bigger issue. That's really something to look at. If you're talking about replacing it with a different cottonwood, make sure it's not producing pollen, because that's what people with true allergies are allergic to, not the cotton, because it actually just carries the seed, not the pollen. If you guys do decide to remove this tree, because it's a nuisance, it actually gives me some hope. Hope that other nuisances in the city will be addressed in the same manner. What's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. This is the tree that's been there for 30 plus years. You got a bunch of trees at risk from ash borer across the street. You could be looking at removing a lot of big trees in the park across the street. It's a shame. It would be a shame to remove a big one, another big one in that general area, because of a little bit of cotton inconvenience. I think what is it, about less than 10 people are complaining about this tree out of 93,000. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak at public invited to be heard? All right. Now it's time for city council comments. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I have 3 items.
Okay.
One is the ice pavilion. Can we get an update about what's going on with that? I mean, we had several people throughout the last month coming and asking us about that. Can we get some update?
We can. So we had a structural engineer look at it. We have staff working with our engineering department to discuss options in terms of what we need to do with that. We have not had any final answer on it, and so we're still waiting for some of that information to really have the options. Staff has not made a final decision in terms of any recommendation that we're going to make to council. It could be that we have to take the existing slab and replace it. There may be options in repairing it, and so we're just waiting on all of those discussions to be completed.
It just seems that some of the residents, the folks that are coming up, thinking this is the pavilion is dead. So I'm just trying to.
I was in a meeting this week with Jeff and Karen, and we had a sense of what it would cost to demo it, what it would cost to put gravel in it. I asked what would it cost to reconcrete the entire area. I've also asked them to get with the engineering staff to look at, is there something that you can do to lay concrete over it? I mean, I'm not an engineer. We're just trying to figure out what are our options so that we can make a recommendation. Obviously, this was unexpected, like the building.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so we're going to have to be finding funding to make the necessary repairs. As soon as we have all of that information, we will provide council with an update.
The Ryder property. Can we get an update about what PRAB has decided?
PRAB decided 5-1 to recommend against disposal of the property. By ordinance, we bring that back to council.
Mm-hmm. When do we anticipate that coming back?
We're looking at in April. We know that's probably going to be a lengthy meeting, so I'm trying to look at agendas to figure out what's the best fit for that in terms of some of the other items that we have to bring forward.
Okay. Tinkermill. Getting all these emails. I'm sure all the members of council are getting the same one about the city's participation in buying their property. Didn't we give them some money already?
Yeah, so I'm not sure on the emails. A few years ago, we provided them with, I believe it was $60,000 for some equipment. Mm-hmm. They have approached us to conversations. They're trying to buy their building right now. To my understanding, what I understand is they've secured a loan and then funding from CHAFA, and they're approximately $85,000 short on the purchase of that property. I've had conversations with them about different options. They are in an enterprise zone and tax benefits, and so Ron and I talked today, but if they want to make that request, they know that they need to make that request of council. What we've indicated is the council would have to look at the council contingency fund for a potential option. Again, I don't know what emails they're sending to you all, but
it's just emails saying
the nature of the conversation at this point.
It's basically pleading for the city. I mean, we can't be everything to everybody. Hopefully, the Tinkermill is looking at all options as far as covering that gap. Perhaps we can participate at a level, but they should be trying everything to close that gap themselves.
And that was communicated.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. At the council retreat, we were talking about city council being involved with the community, fixing up a place or whatever. At the youth council meeting, they requested that they be part of that. So can we add them to that list? I think that'd be a great collaboration of youth council and city. Thank you.
Mike, everything died on me, so Sandy, can you make sure you write that down? Thank you. It did.
Okay. City manager, any comments?
Yes, Mayor, Council. There actually is one item. The Visit Longmont Board had a request of someone requesting a leave of absence. Unfortunately, though, there is quorum issues that they're dealing with, and so Valerie, do you want to talk in more detail about that?
Yes. Yes. As you know, Visit Longmont has one vacancy with Wes leaving, and we were waiting until the midterm board appointments to recruit for that, because that was the direction of council and it wasn't a quorum problem. They've now had another council-appointed position that is asking for a leave of absence. I don't have any precedents. That's something council needs to consider, but if they grant a leave of absence, they'll have a quorum problem. Either way, even if they resign, they'll have a quorum problem. If you grant a leave of absence, they'll have a quorum problem. So I need to get some direction for Nancy on whether we can grant a leave of absence, and then secondly, can we move forward and do the recruitment for Visit Longmont immediately?
I think we need to move forward. Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was going to say, I think we should move forward immediately, and I read the email, and it sounds unfortunate for that family. Unemployment's a rough go, but I think that, and it could last for, I've got some clients that go on for years. I have one that's, so I guess I'd like to move immediately on filling both seats.
And we can certainly communicate with this board member and let them know that they're welcome to come back and apply when their situation changes.
Okay.
Further comments, Mayor, Council?
Councilmember Christensen?
They don't have any alternates?
They're not a city board. They're
Oh, that's
a
right,
separate
that's right.
board, yeah.
Okay, yes, that's right.
City Attorney, any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.